Chapter 10:77. His heavenly demonic power had not reached a certain level yet. Although he had entered the 9th level, there was still a huge gap between him and Fu Qingya. However, he could make up for it by devouring heavenly demonic orbs. If he could devour the 4 Grand Elders' heavenly demonic orbs, he should be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Fu Qingya. Nonetheless, he could only think about it and could not carry it out. It was too dangerous to devour heavenly demonic orbs in heavenly demonic sect, since Fu Qingya could come over at any time. He pondered for a while and suddenly appeared in adjacent town. It was early evening, and the small courtyard was brightly lit. Xiao Qi was sitting by the stone table in the courtyard. She wore a white gown and furrowed her brows. Her eyes were cold, and she seemed to be deep in thought. Chu Li opened the door and walked out of the house. Xiao Qi's cold eyes flickered as she glanced at him and said, "You're finally back." Chu Li noticed her strange expression and went to her side. A faint fragrance wafted into his nose. "What happened?" "Lu Xing is dead," Xiao Qi said. Chu Li's expression changed. "Lu Xing?" Xiao Qi said. "He was killed by King and himself, and his body was separated." Chu Li took a deep breath and slowly said, "He's really crazy. Why did he kill Lu Xing?" "He said that he disobeyed orders on purpose," Xiao Qi said. "In any case, he could always find an excuse to kill someone. He must have pressured second eldest sister to return to the imperial residence, or else he would have killed more people." "Didn't I ask them to retreat?" Chu Li frowned. He knew that King would do something desperate, so he asked Lu Xing and the others to go to the High Duke's public house to prevent King from finding an excuse to attack him and cut off his wings. Xiao Qi said they were delayed by something and didn't have time to move. Maybe King saw that they wanted to leave and decided to strike first. That damn fella! Chu Li slammed the stone table and was furious. He quickly suppressed his anger and asked, "What about the others?" "They were injured by him earlier, and their martial arts have been crippled," Xiao Qi said. Chu Li sneered. "He's taking revenge on me for crippling his martial arts back then. As a prince, how can he tolerate being bullied?" Xiao Qi said, "It's good enough that they don't bully others. He's just settling the score later." Chu Li took a deep breath and once again suppressed his raging anger. Xiao Qi said, "The dead can't come back to life. Don't be too sad. You can't be blamed." Chu Li shook his head. "I have to avenge them. You want to kill King and—" Xiao Qi frowned. Chu Li said, "I want to kill him." Xiao Qi stared at him and sighed softly. "You know the consequences." Chu Li stared at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi looked at him quietly with her bright eyes. It was as if the two of them could read each other's minds just by looking at each other. Xiao Qi calmly replied, "All right then, kill him if you want to. I'm sure you have a plan in mind, right?" Chu Li said, "I've been preparing for this all this while. I originally wanted to be more prepared, but it seems like I can't wait any longer. King is like a mad dog now. If I don't kill him, he'll kill more people." Previously, he was prepared to devour another 2 level 9 heavenly demonic power masters. With the heavenly demonic stone, the demon hunting technique, and some information, he might be able to find them. Then, he would be more confident in mastering the 9th level. However, it seemed like time waited for no man. He could not drag it any longer. He had to kill King as soon as possible. He might have already started to deal with the High Duke's public house. If the High Duke's public house retaliated and he died, the High Duke's public house would be under suspicion. The Emperor would definitely attack the High Duke's public house. Xiao Qi asked, "What do you want?" Chu Li pondered. "I'm only 1 step away from entering the inner mausoleum to take a look." "You can't enter the inner mausoleum." Xiao Qi frowned. There's a formation protecting it, and the security is extremely tight. Chu Li let out a smile. His heavenly demonic power was getting more profound now, so he was more confident in sneaking into the inner mausoleum. Lu Shuzhou was a handsome middle-aged man with a slender figure. When he returned from his duty at the outer mausoleum in the evening, his beautiful concubine had already prepared a meal and wine for him to drink. After a few glasses of wine, his eyes became hazy, and he began to get tipsy. Only when he was tipsy could he forget his boring life, forget all the unhappiness and worries. He thought of the debauchery he had in Fairy's capital, and now it was a life worse than death. Although he had a beautiful concubine by his side, no matter how beautiful a woman was, he would get bored after looking at her for a long time. It was unlike when he was in Fairy's capital, where he could enjoy different kinds of beauties, drink and play every day. There were too many beauties in Fairy's capital. As a secret guardian of Secret Guardians Hall, he was the Emperor's lackey. He was awe-inspiring and fearless. When he sat in the restaurant, no one dared to say anything, and he could hold his head high. Now, not only was he obedient, but he would also be scolded by a group of old men if he slacked off. It was like heaven and earth. Sometimes he thought that this kind of life was really boring. He might as well die, or even escape from adjacent town to another country. Even if he could only escape for a few days before being captured, it would be better than this lifeless and depressing life. However, he would have this thought every time he drank. After he sobered up, he would still go to the outer mausoleum to do his duty. He would also go to the inner mausoleum once every 10 days. Chapter 1078. You're an outer mausoleum guardian? Who exactly are you? The middle-aged man shook his head. Who I am isn't important. What's important is that I can help you leave the Imperial Mausoleum. Leave the Imperial Mausoleum. Lu Shuzhou sneered and shook his head. Once you enter the Imperial Mausoleum, you'll forever be an Imperial Mausoleum guardian. You can't leave anymore. No one will believe you. The middle-aged man asked, if you leave the Ji dynasty, will you still be an Imperial Mausoleum guardian? I can't leave the Ji dynasty. Lu Shuzhou shook his head. I can tell that you don't understand. Once I leave, a master will immediately track me down. I won't be able to escape. I have a way for you to escape. The middle-aged man said, just like how I brought you here. Do you know how powerful the Imperial Mausoleum's masters are? Lu Shuzhou said coldly. Do you think you can get me away just because you brought me here? You're underestimating the Imperial Mausoleum Guardians. I have a way to get you to the Fu dynasty. The middle-aged man said, no one will know. They won't be able to catch up. It's useless. Lu Shuzhou shook his head. The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows. Lu Shuzhou sighed. The Imperial Mausoleum Guardians have divine powers. It's useless even if I escape to the ends of the earth. They can easily track me down with divine powers. I've given up. What do you want? There's no such thing as giving without asking for anything in return. Are you going to explore the inner mausoleum? The middle-aged man said slowly, yes, I want to take a look inside the inner mausoleum. That's pure suicide. Lu Shuzhou said, there's nothing to see in the inner mausoleum. Oh, the middle-aged man scoffed. Doesn't it contain the secrets of an enlightened master? Lu Shuzhou laughed and shook his head. There's no secret of an enlightened master. You'll naturally reach it if your cultivation level is high enough. It's useless no matter how much you study it. There are so many inner mausoleum guardians, but I don't see any enlightened master. Having a direction is better than nothing. The middle-aged man said slowly, there are divine powers in the inner mausoleum. That's right, Lu Shuzhou said in a low voice. So don't go to your death. Once you step into the inner mausoleum, you won't be able to shake them off. They can find you immediately if they want to. I heard it's the all-seeing divine power. I heard it's the all-seeing divine power. Lu Shuzhou scoffed. The middle-aged man frowned. Could it be an eminent monk from the Titanium Temple? Yes. Lu Shuzhou nodded. The middle-aged man said nothing. He really did not know about this. If it was an eminent monk from the Titanium Temple, he would not be afraid because he had the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, which could restrain the supernatural powers of the Titanium Temple. However, Lu Shuzhou might not be able to do so. How about this? I'll give you another Vajra relic to restrain the divine ability, the middle-aged man said solemnly. Lu Shuzhou was surprised. You have a titanium sarira? Chuli raised his wrist and said, Is it this? There was a string of Buddhist beads on his wrist. It was a titanium sarira. It was different from the normal sarira. It was crystal clear and warm like jade. Moreover, it faintly emitted an indescribable aura. He, Chu, Chu, and Chu, Lu, and Tos Lu, and Lu. Lu Shuzhou took it and carefully caressed it. Then he slowly nodded and looked up at Lu Shuzhou. It really is a titanium sarira. Who are you? You don't need to know who I am. The middle-aged man said faintly, I'll send you to the Fu dynasty and give you 2 titanium relics. You'll tell me about the situation inside the imperial mausoleum. This is a deal. Do you agree? I want to go to the Fu dynasty first, Lu Shuzhou said in a low voice. The middle-aged man said, No problem. Lu Shuzhou looked at him with a frown. Bring my concubine along, too. Yes, the middle-aged man said in a deep voice. Lu Shuzhou was about to fulfill his wish at the last moment, but he was still hesitant. Who are you? The middle-aged man shook his head. All right. Lu Shuzhou thought about it and finally agreed. The middle-aged man disappeared in a flash. Lu Shuzhou felt a sharp pain at the back of his head. Just as he was about to be alerted, his vision went black, and he fainted. When he woke up, he found that the sky was bright, and he was lying on a wide and big bed with a beautiful concubine lying beside him. He got up and saw the middle-aged man sitting by the table under the window. The middle-aged man was reading a book when he heard the noise. He put down the book and turned to look at Lu Shuzhou with a smile. This is the Fu dynasty's Pinghua City. You can go out and have a look. Lu Shuzhou was surprised. How long has it been? The middle-aged man replied, 2 days. In fact, it was only the 2nd day. Lu Shuzhou glided out of the room and saw that he was in a standard residence with 3 entrances. He glided out of the residence and came to the main street. When he saw the different architectural styles around him, he knew that he had left the Ji dynasty. He asked an old man where he was, and the old man told him that it was Pinghua City, a big city in the eastern part of the Fu dynasty. Lu Shuzhou found it hard to believe that he had left the imperial mausoleum and arrived in the Fu dynasty in 2 days. He had always dreamed of hiding his identity in a foreign country and living a leisurely life. He did not have to go to the imperial mausoleum to suffer the monotony of the inner mausoleum or the pressure of the mountains. He did not expect his dream to come true. He looked down at his wrist and found a string of Buddha beads. There was a titanium sarira in the beads that emitted a warm aura to warm him up. He was surprised and suspicious. He was even more curious about the middle-aged man's identity. The man's ability to subdue him showed that he was a top-notch master. Why did he help him? Was it just to take a look at the inner mausoleum? When he returned to the residence, he saw the middle-aged man sitting at the stone table in the courtyard. He was holding a cup of tea and sipping it quietly with a leisurely expression. He sat down beside the middle-aged man and gave him a fist salute. Thank you. The middle-aged man shook his head. It's just a deal. I want to know, how many protectors are there in the inner mausoleum? There are a total of 36 inner mausoleum protectors. Lu Shujo said in a low voice. All of them are top-notch masters with a 300-year cultivation base. The middle-aged man asked in a low voice. 36 of them with a 300-year cultivation base. Yes, Lu Shujo replied. There are even some with 400-year cultivation base. The middle-aged man frowned. Lu Shujo said, although these inner mausoleum protectors haven't become enlightened masters, they've improved their cultivation base by studying the secrets of the enlightened masters. They've broken through the lifespan limit. I heard that there are even 500-year-old monsters. The middle-aged man's frown deepened. Lu Shujo said, among these masters, there are some with great divine powers. The middle-aged man said in a low voice, the Imperial Mausoleum is protected by a formation and suppressed by treasures. Divine powers can't be used, right? Yes, divine powers can't be used. Lu Shujo nodded. However, once you get close, it's impossible to escape. With divine powers tracking you, who can escape? But you have the titanium Sarira, so you don't have to be afraid of divine powers. The middle-aged man frowned. I heard that there's the previous emperor's indestructible golden body. Yes. Lu Shujo nodded. And it's not just a golden body. Most of the secret manuals of the first-rate martial arts sects in the Great Ji Dynasty were derived from spirit beasts, but unfortunately, there were no illustrations of spirit beasts. They treated spirit beasts as legends for less than 1,000 years, as no one had actually seen them. The illustrations were getting more and more outrageous, treating wild beasts as spirit beasts. They felt that spirit beasts should look similar to wild beasts, but they did not know that spirit beasts and wild beasts were not the same species at all. Therefore, the paintings of spiritual beasts today were far from the original appearance of the spiritual beasts. Although his omniscient mirror could not see his appearance, his mind was still quick-witted. He could imprint the information in his mind with just one sweep. At the same time, he was also observing the traces of the formations around him. The formations here were truly brilliant. Up until now, he had not been able to see through any of the formations, let alone find their flaws. However, he knew that this was not just one array. It was the combination of several arrays. That was why it was so powerful. That oppressive pressure came from the heavenly deity golden body. It really lived up to its reputation. It seemed like he had underestimated the heavenly deity experts in the past. He followed the old man and slowly walked in. After walking for about a mile, they arrived in front of a palace gate. It turned out to be a pair of bronze doors, and an eerie, murderous aura gushed out. These two bronze doors also had an extraordinary origin. If he was not wrong, they were similar to the battle flags on the battlefield, and could suppress the inner energy of martial arts masters. When his inner energy reached the bronze doors, it was instantly reduced to less than 1/10. He smiled bitterly in his heart. After experiencing these layers of suppression, even the most powerful masters would become soft prawns when they entered. The combat strength they could exert was limited. It was no wonder that no one had succeeded in the Imperial Mausoleum for thousands of years. Stepping through the bronze doors, they were faced with a wide square. At a glance, they would have to ride a horse to walk from the east to the west. It was the same size as the imperial house in the Great Ji Dynasty's fairies' capital. In fact, it was slightly larger than the imperial house. The old man in red led the four of them for more than 200 steps and arrived at the bottom of the stairs in front of the basilica. On the stairs of the basilica stood an old man in black with a horsetail whisk in his hand. He was not tall and was fair and plump. He looked kind, just like the scribes of the imperial house in the fairies' capital. The old man in black shook his horsetail whisk lightly and looked at Chu Li and the others lazily. Elder Zhao, these 4 young fellows are on duty today. The old man in red fist saluted. Elder Zhao, through Lu Shuzhou, he already knew that Chongwen Hall was the most important place. It was where the golden body of the previous emperor was located. The presence of the golden body here was akin to having an audience in Chongwen Hall when he was alive. The closer the era, the more powerful the golden body became. The golden body in Chongwen Hall was the most powerful. Standing outside Chongwen Hall was a form of torture. It was the most painful. All right, it's settled then. The old man in black smiled. It's your turn now. You can just switch over next time. Chu Li sighed helplessly. Chapter 1081. They were at the front hall where the chancellors were supposed to rest. They could rest here before the morning assembly and rest after the assembly. After all, morning assembly was a strenuous affair. It would be too much to walk out of the imperial house after standing for so long. Young Lu, come with me. The elder in black chuckled and flicked his horsetail whisk. The 3 of you wait here. I'll send you there later. Yes, Elder Zhao. The 3 of them closed fist, saluted, and nodded respectfully. The elder's plump body descended the steps. Chu Li followed behind him and walked around the hall. After walking for about 200 meters, they arrived at a hall at the back. A plaque hung above the hall. The words Chongwen Hall glowed in gold. Chu Li looked up and was stunned. Without the omniscient mirror, he was not as sensitive to his surroundings. Only now did he realize that the top of his head was different after entering the imperial house. There were no longer murals or smooth stones above his head. Instead, there were luminous pearls embedded in the stone slabs. These luminous pearls were not counted individually, but in clusters, forming the shape of the night sky. A cluster or several clusters of luminous pearls formed a constellation. There was also a cluster of luminous pearls that formed a bright moon, emitting a gentle glow. The Forbidden Palace was also inlaid with luminous pearls, so there was no need for torches. One could see everything clearly, although it couldn't be compared to daytime. It gave off the feeling of being brightly lit. There wasn't the slightest bit of eerie feeling, and one would forget that they were underground. Chu Li was speechless. He did not know how many luminous pearls were embedded above his head. If he had the omniscient mirror, he would be able to estimate most of them. Now, he had to look at them one by one. It took him a while to count them all. The luxury of the imperial house was on full display. Young Lu, why are you spacing out? Come here. The elder in black walked in front and turned to look at him. Chu Li smiled. Elder Zhao, do I really have to come to Chongwen Hall? Young? Boom. Death. Lu Xian, Si Fai Bone. Radamine to Judge Mo Sang? To bear the burden of whispering? Call. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Chu Li heaved a sigh of relief, and closed fist saluted. Thank you, Elder Zhao. The black-robed old man said, It's not easy outside the hall either. You have to hold on. For the outer mausoleum protectors, the inner mausoleum rotation was a tough job. It would be fine if they could persevere, but if they could not, their martial arts would be completely destroyed, and they would eventually become useless. Therefore, every rotation was dangerous and related to their fate. He had no choice but to ask Chu Li to guard Chongwen Hall. He had checked the cultivation levels of the 4 of them, and Chu Li's was the strongest, so he could only be chosen. Chu Li sighed. I'll try my best. If you can hold on, this old man will give you some benefits. The black-clothed old man chuckled. Chu Li immediately perked up. What benefits did Sir Zhao give me? I'll give you 2 jars of wine. The black-robed elder chuckled. I know that you're addicted to alcohol. This is a gift from the imperial house to the inner mausoleum. Outsiders can't drink it. Thank you, Elder Zhao. Chu Li revealed a drooling expression as he cupped his fists and thanked him sincerely. The black-robed old man smiled and said, Stand guard here. Don't go in. Yes, Chu Li nodded solemnly. He knew that there were masters in the house. Chong Wen Hall's security was the tightest. It was not only on the periphery, but also inside the hall. He could not force his way in. He did not have the omniscient mirror, so he could not hear or see clearly. His hands and feet were tied, and he did not know what masters were in the hall or what the indestructible golden body looked like. However, waves of mountainous and ocean-like aura surged over and kept pressing on him. He felt like he was in a raging wave or carrying a mountain. It was heavy and difficult. His body seemed to be creaking as his bones were about to be crushed, and his flesh was about to be crushed. He activated the Mahavairocana's immobility scripture. The giant Buddha's halo in the void of his mind rotated behind his head. The snow-white halo flickered continuously. He felt refreshed and relaxed. He no longer felt dizzy, but it was still uncomfortable. He carefully observed his body and sensed the aura. Was it an illusion or was it real? Did it directly affect his spirit, or was it an intangible aura like the heavenly demonic power? He used the omniscient mirror to observe the situation in his body and realized that it did not only affect his spirit, but it was a real aura. It was an intangible existence and was somewhat similar to the heavenly demonic energy on Fuqingya. After the aura invaded his body, he felt like he was being pressed. He felt the weight and power acting on his spirit at the same time. Those with a weaker cultivation level would be quickly defeated. Their spirit and body would collapse at the same time, so their martial arts would be greatly weakened. He shook his head and sighed. It seemed that the attack he saw from the Emperor was not the Emperor's full strength. It was just the tip of the iceberg. He still had a long way to go if he wanted to escape from the Emperor. Other things aside, this aura alone was enough to make him feel helpless. Even with the Mahavairocana's immobility scripture, he could not get close to Chongwen Hall. He could only stand far away. Moreover, his body was in excruciating pain. He had to circulate his inner energy desperately to withstand it. He did not know how long he could last. His inner energy had been weakened to less than 1/10 of its original power. Chapter 1082. At noon, the elder in black leisurely walked over with a lunchbox and handed it to him. Here, take it. Eat well. Chu Li thanked him and took the lunchbox. Where are the protectors inside? They don't eat lunch. They eat together at night. The elder in black smiled. Chu Li was surprised. They don't eat lunch? They spend most of their time cultivating and don't have the mood for lunch. It's fine to go hungry. The elder in black smiled. How is it? Can you hold on? I see that you're very relaxed. How rare. Chu Li's performance was beyond his expectations. He thought it would be difficult for him to hold on until noon, but now it seemed easy and effortless. Chu Li smiled and nodded. I'm enlightened under the heavy pressure, and my martial arts improved. The inner mausoleum is really a good place. If it was the outer mausoleum, I don't know how long it would take for me to improve like this. Thank you, Elder Zhao. The elder in black, Zhao Xian, waved his plump white hand and chuckled. It all depends on your understanding and luck. No need to thank me. Look at you. You can hold on easily. Chu Li nodded. I feel very relaxed now. By the way, Elder Zhao, can I go in and take a look? Oh, you can't. Zhao Xian shook his head. You're an outer mausoleum protector. You can't enter the hall. This is a dead rule. No one can break it. Only inner mausoleum protectors. Chu Li asked. Only inner mausoleum protectors. Zhao Xian said. Besides, your cultivation level isn't high enough. Entering the hall will only harm you. It's a whole different world from the outside. It's 10 times more powerful. You can relax now, but you can't go in. Chu Li shook his head. I really want to go in and take a look. If I can't see the enlightened master's golden body, my life will be boring. Then there's only one way. Zhao Xian grinned. Enter the inner mausoleum and become an inner mausoleum protector. Chu Li asked, how can I join the inner mausoleum? You really want to enter the inner mausoleum? Zhao Xian was surprised. You have to know that the inner mausoleum isn't like the outer mausoleum. You have to endure this pressure all day. Enduring 3 days in one go is the first step to entering the inner mausoleum. No problem. I can endure 3 days, Chu Li said. Zhao Xian chuckled and said, I know you never wanted to be an imperial mausoleum guard. You still yearn for the glory of Fairy's capital. Chu Li sighed and said helplessly, I wasn't satisfied before, and being a protector was tiring. Now that my martial arts has improved, it's different. Since I can't return to the Fairy's capital, I'll just cultivate my martial arts well. Who knows, I might become an enlightened master. Hee, good, this is a good idea. Zhao Xian nodded in satisfaction. All right, since you want to become an inner mausoleum protector, you'll have to pass the first test first. From today onwards, you'll stay in the inner mausoleum for 3 days and 3 nights. No problem. Chu Li said, I can become an inner mausoleum protector, just like that. That depends on everyone's opinion. Zhao Xian said, as long as 10 inner mausoleum protectors agree, you can enter. Does Elder Zhao agree? Of course I have no problem. Zhao Xian smiled. There hasn't been a newcomer in the inner mausoleum for a long time. It's rare that someone dares to come in. Chu Li Fist saluted with a grateful expression. Let's eat. Zhao Xian smiled. The inner mausoleum protectors are above all the other protectors. They're even better than ordinary imperial house protectors. Moreover, they can enter Fairy's capital. You can't tell anyone else about this, or else you'll be executed. Chu Li looked at him in surprise. Zhao Xian said, there are 3 levels of imperial house protectors. The innermost level is the inner mausoleum protectors. Every 2 years, a new batch of inner mausoleum protectors will be replaced. The inner mausoleum protectors will take turns to go to the imperial house. Chu Li was surprised. Aren't they supposed to stay in the inner mausoleum for the rest of their lives? Zhao Xian said, the imperial house and the inner mausoleum have always been one. One lives and one dies, one yin and one yang. The inner mausoleum protectors often travel between the inner mausoleum and the imperial house. If they get tired of the inner mausoleum, they go to the imperial house. If they get tired of the imperial house, they return to the inner mausoleum. Then I want to enter the inner mausoleum even more. The inner mausoleum isn't that easy to enter. If your cultivation level isn't high enough, we don't want it. I believe I can enter the inner mausoleum. Then I'll wait and see. He flicked his horsetail whisk and fluttered away. Chu Li opened the lunchbox. There were 4 dishes and 2 soups inside. They smelled, and looked delicious. He tasted a few mouthfuls. It was better than the best restaurant in adjacent town. He was multitasking. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture and Mahavairokkana's Immobility Scripture were constantly circulating. Mahavairokkana's Immobility Scripture was slowly improving under this heavy pressure. He had a vague understanding. If Mahavairokkana's Immobility Scripture was profound enough, he might be able to counteract the surrounding pressure and recover his divine power. That was why he wanted to enter the inner mausoleum. The stronger the pressure, the more likely it was for him to improve Mahavairocana's immobility scripture. If he could use his divine power, he would have a greater chance. For the next 3 days and 3 nights, he kept watch outside Chonwon Hall. Other than eating, drinking, and defecating, he did not leave. Under such circumstances, he could not sleep. He had to constantly circulate his energy to resist the pressure. The morning of the 4th day arrived. He could not see the outside, but through the changes in his blood, he knew the time. It was early in the morning. Zhao Xian chuckled and waved. "Come, young Lu, follow me." Chu Li fist saluted. Although his face was a little pale, he was still full of energy. Zhao Xian was all smiles and seemed very satisfied with Chu Li. He led him for about 5 miles and arrived at a basilica. Chu Li glanced at the basilica. It was the meeting room of the imperial house. It was where the scribes in the palace discussed matters. Zhao Xian pushed the door open. A group of people was already sitting inside. Chu Li glanced at them. There were 32 elders. The armchairs were arranged in layers, leaving only an empty space in the middle. Zhao Xian fist saluted and smiled. "Everyone, this is young Lu who wants to join the inner mausoleum." The 32 elders' eyes were like lightning. Their aura was almost tangible. Although it was not as strong as the enlightened master's golden body, it was enough to subdue an ordinary person without a fight. Under the 32 pairs of eyes, Chu Li fist saluted calmly. "Lu Shuzhou greets all the elders." "Lu Shuzhou, why do you want to join the inner mausoleum?" "I want to understand the enlightened master's path and return to Fairy's capital." Chu Li fist saluted and answered. He openly met a pair of eyes that were like lightning. It was a skinny elder. The elder was as thin as a tree, but his spirit was full of vigor. He was full of energy and did not look lethargic at all. "Ha! You want to return to Fairy's capital?" The skinny elder nodded. "How dare you?" Chu Li smiled. "I can't bear to part with the enlightened master's path and the prosperous world. That's why I want to join the inner mausoleum. This is my true intention. I see that your cultivation level is ordinary. How did you last for 3 days and 3 nights? The skinny elder asked. Chu Li said, "I had a fortuitous encounter and inherited the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture." Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture? Everyone frowned. They were all devoted to martial arts and were exceptionally knowledgeable about it. They could tell the foundation from the name. The Reincarnation Temple's Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture? Someone asked. Chu Li nodded slowly. Everyone fell silent and began to discuss. Among them was a middle-aged man who looked rough and heroic. He chuckled. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture is the Reincarnation Temple's cornerstone martial art. How did you get it? Chu Li said, "I once saved a monk." The monk imparted the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture to me before he died. "Oh, then he didn't let you return to the Reincarnation Temple?" The middle-aged man smiled. Chu Li shook his head. The research of the heavenly deity Tao is a long and arduous process. You are still young, and your temperament is still unsettled. There is no need to be anxious. The middle-aged man said with a smile. Chu Li asked, "May I know how old you are?" "This old man is 120. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "As far as I know, you are only in your 40s, right?" Chu Li smiled helplessly. "I really couldn't tell how old you are. It's not too late to enter the inner mausoleum after you're 100 years old," the middle-aged man said with a smile. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. From the looks of it, if he wanted him to wait for 60 years, his path to the mausoleum would be blocked. If he could not enter the inner mausoleum, he could not enter the hall to see the golden body. If he could not come into contact with the golden body, he could forget about the enlightened master's power. Little Lou, don't worry. The middle-aged man laughed heartily and said, 60 years will pass in the blink of an eye. If you cultivate, well, you'll definitely be able to enter the inner mausoleum when you're 100 years old. Apart from enduring for 3 days and 3 nights to enter the inner mausoleum, what other criteria are there? Chu Li said plainly, his gaze sweeping across every elder. We can't just let people in based on their impressions and exclude people if they think they are good, right? Of course there are criteria. The middle-aged man smiled and said, if you defeat me, you can enter the inner mausoleum. Chu Li fist saluted and said, then I would like to learn a thing or two from you, senior. Little Hu, don't be afraid of losing. One of the elders laughed and said. The middle-aged man's expression did not change. He smiled and said, Senior Zheng, you underestimate me. I have cultivated here for 20 years. If I lose to this young man, I will be too ashamed to face anyone. Ha ha, aren't you afraid of losing and embarrassing yourself? The elder laughed and said. Everyone smiled faintly. The middle-aged man shook his head and said, you seniors are just afraid that I won't be embarrassed. As he spoke, he got up and left the armchair. He approached Chu Li and said, Little Lou, make your move. Let's see how capable you are. Chu Li fist saluted and said, Senior, you should make your move first. All right, take this. The middle-aged man no longer held back. He pressed his palm forward at lightning speed. This was a place where martial arts were suppressed. Less than 10% of the people here were still alive. The fact that he could move so quickly showed how profound his cultivation level was. Chu Li extended his palm to meet the attack. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Chu Li stood firmly on the spot, while the middle-aged man did not retreat. Their palms joined together as if they were glued together. They did not move an inch as they competed with their inner energy. Chapter 1084. Chu Li smiled. Can I enter the inner mausoleum now? The skinny elder smiled. Xiao, Hu, you think he can? The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture is indeed powerful. The middle-aged man said, All right, I agree to let him in. The skinny elder turned his head and looked around. Let me experience the young man's Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. An elder landed in front of Chu Li. Elder Qian, what are you doing? The skinny elder smiled. The young man's Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture is mysterious. I want to experience it. Elder Qian smiled. He had a dignified appearance, a burly figure, and a righteous expression. Sai, take it easy then. The skinny elder shook his head. Elder Qian smiled. Don't worry, young man. Come, let's compete. Let's see if you can dispel my inner energy. As he spoke, he extended his right palm. Chu Li fist saluted and extended his right palm as well. Their palms met. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Elder Qian's white hair moved even though there was no wind. He wanted to put Chu Li in his place. Chu Li stood firmly in place. His body did not move, and his expression did not change. Elder Qian grinned. You're quite capable. Impressive. He felt that his inner energy was like a clay ox entering the sea. When the mighty inner energy touched Chu Li, it disappeared without a sound. There was no ripple or movement. It was very strange. Chu Li's expression was calm, but he was excited. He proposed the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture in preparation to absorb everyone's inner energy. The inner energy of these inner mausoleum protectors was extremely pure and most suitable for the heavenly demonic orb to devour. although it was not as fast as the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique to devour the heavenly demonic orb. It was a rare opportunity. He believed that his heavenly demonic power would improve after sparring with these inner mausoleum protectors. He could not miss such a good opportunity. As for the origin of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, his identity as a secret guardian was enough to convince people that the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture could not be subverted. Otherwise, no one would agree to let him enter the inner mausoleum. After 15 minutes, white steam rose from the top of Elder Qian's head. He continued to channel his inner energy until he was exhausted. Chu Li gently released a palm energy, and Elder Qian was sent flying. Elder Qian landed steadily after he was sent flying and exclaimed, "What a powerful young man! I'll do it!" Another elder flew out, eager to hunt. A few of them sat back down in disappointment, not wanting to be the first to go. Chu Li did not reject anyone and extended his hand. He did not look like he had just fought 2 rounds of inner energy. He was still in high spirits. A quarter of an hour later, the old man flew out again. "Yo, it looks like the little fellow is going to defeat all the masters in the inner mausoleum." The skinny elder laughed. Zhao Xian laughed and said, "If you can defeat all of us, that would be wonderful." Chu Li used his inner energy and smiled. "I wouldn't dare to hope for that. Little Lu has already held on for 3 days. Once he's rested, everyone will try again." The skinny old man smiled. "Old Meng is the last one. Elder Su, give me 2 more. Look, little Lu doesn't look tired at all." "That's right. Do you have any shame? How old are you?" "This has nothing to do with age. I just want to see how far he can go. This Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture is really powerful. The reincarnation temple is better than the Tempest temple. How can the temple's divine technique not be powerful? However, the more powerful a martial art is, the harder it is to cultivate. Little Lu can be considered a genius for cultivating to this level. It's a pity he's unlucky. How did he get thrown into the Imperial Mausoleum? Something went wrong, and he was thrown here by the Emperor. He's really unlucky." Sigh, this is fate. While the crowd was discussing, Chu Li once again sent the old man flying. He was satisfied. His heavenly demonic power had improved a little. If he did not use the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique, he did not know how long it would take for him to improve so much. All right. Let little Lu rest for a day." The skinny old man smiled. "I'm Su Jinshan. Little Lu, you're an inner mausoleum protector from today onwards." Chu Li fist saluted. "Thank you, Elder Su. Don't thank me. You earned it yourself." Su Jinshan smiled. "Once you enter the inner mausoleum, your task will be heavier. You can live in the outer mausoleum and guard the inner mausoleum for 1 day every 2 days. Yes, Chu Li said, I wanted to see the wonders of the enlightened master's golden body. You'll have plenty of opportunities in the future. Now, go outside and make arrangements, Su Jinshan said. Chu Li fist saluted. Let's go, little Lu. Follow me out. I'll find you a place to stay first. Zhao Xian flicked his horsetail whisk and smiled. Chu Li fist saluted the crowd and left with Zhao Xian. The elders stared at Chu Li's back. Finally, an interesting little fellow. Xiao Hu, you're not the youngest anymore. The middle-aged man smiled helplessly. I didn't expect him to be so powerful. I'm ashamed. What's there to be ashamed about? This is the martial arts world. He benefited from the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, so he can transform inner energy and enlightened master's force. I wonder how far he can get to the golden body. I think it won't be a problem to get within 10 feet. 10 feet. I'm afraid it'll be difficult. The closest is 15 feet. Elder Su, Do you think little Lu can get within 10 feet? More or less? The skinny elder Su Jinshan nodded. The Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture is mysterious beyond compare. He has a deep understanding of it. It's not impossible for him to get within 10 feet. This little Lu is really lucky. The closer one got to the golden body, the greater the benefit, and the deeper the understanding of enlightened masters. Most of them could not get within 30 feet. Only 2 of them could get within 10 feet. They were so close to touching the golden body. Most of them could only hover around 30 feet away. Don't be discouraged. Everyone, strive to catch up to little Lu. Chu Li and Zhao Xian left the inner mausoleum and walked up the stairs to the palace on the ground. This was where the outer mausoleum was. Although there was no longer the pressure from before, divine power and inner energy could not be used. Zhao Xian led him straight to the back until they entered the imperial garden. The imperial garden was lush with flowers. Due to the protection of the formation, it was evergreen all year round. It was as warm as spring. The flowers were still blooming, and their fragrance permeated the air. Little Lu, you can choose a courtyard in the imperial garden to live in, Zhao Xian said with a smile. Are you satisfied with this place? Isn't this a little overstepping my bounds? Chu Li asked. Zhao Xian shook his head. Inner mausoleum protectors can live in the imperial garden. This is a rule, not an overstepping. Even if they enter the imperial house, inner mausoleum protectors can live in the imperial garden. Chu Li nodded slowly and smiled. All right, pick one. Zhao Xian smiled. Don't be dazzled. Chu Li smiled and walked around the entire imperial garden. Then he picked a waterside pavilion on a small lake. Zhao Xian smiled and nodded. He called for someone to come and clean it up. Chu Li left the outer mausoleum and returned to adjacent town. After returning to Lu Shuzhou's residence, he appeared in his own residence in a flash. It was noon. Xiao Qi was taking a nap in her room. Hearing movement, she came out in a white tunic. Her hair was loose, and she looked languid and delicate. It was completely different from her usual cold demeanor. She was soft and charming, gentle like water. The huge contrast was particularly touching. Chu Li's heart pounded, and he reached out to her. Xiao Qi rolled her eyes at him and sat opposite him in the gazebo. Chu Li's heart itched even more. A faint fragrance floated in front of his nose. He wanted nothing more than to hug her. 3 days and 3 nights. Are you okay? Chapter 10, 85. Don't worry, there's no bad news. Xiao Qi nodded. They've all retreated to the High Duke's public house. King and is probably thinking of something. Chu Li's face darkened. When he thought of King and his killing intent surged. He wanted nothing more than to kill him right there, and then his desire for the enlightened master's energy grew stronger. Once he devoured the enlightened master's energy, he would immediately set out to kill King Un. There will be news from the imperial residence, Xiao Qi said. They'll know if he does anything unusual. Chu Li gently nodded. He had many informants in the residence, so he did not have to specifically remind them. If there was any news, they would definitely find a way to pass it to Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi asked, How's your progress? It's going well. Chu Li smiled. Ever since he entered the inner mausoleum, his journey had been smooth sailing. The Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture could transform his aura. He even wondered if he could directly transform this aura and absorb it into the heavenly demonic power. If that was the case, the advancement of the heavenly demonic power would be even faster. Unfortunately, while it was a beautiful idea, it was extremely difficult to put into practice. His mastery of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture was still too shallow to be converted into the heavenly demonic energy. It could only be converted into the inner energy of the cloud slashing power. This cloud slashing power inner energy was different from the usual cloud slashing power inner energy. The inner energy that he transformed in the inner mausoleum could ignore the suppression of the bronze gates and not be weakened. As a result, his cultivation level in the inner mausoleum was much higher than usual, shortening the gap between him and the surrounding inner mausoleum protectors. Xiaoqi looked at him and sighed faintly. Chuli smiled. "Don't worry, I'm lucky." He knew why Xiaoqi sighed. She was worried about him. After all, going against an enlightened master was no different from suicide. Xiaoqi nodded gently and did not say much. However, her gaze softened Chu Li's heart. He wished that he could change his mind and stop risking his life so that he could stay with Xiaoqi for a long time. He hurriedly raised his spirits, got rid of these thoughts, and continued to think about how to improve. At dawn, Chu Li returned to the imperial garden in the outer mausoleum. His waterside pavilion had been cleaned to the point where not even a speck of dust could be seen. The windows were bright, and the tables were clean. There were a few vases of fresh flowers in the pavilion, giving it an elegant and pleasant beauty. The bedding and sheets were all replaced with new ones. A faint fragrance of sandalwood floated in the room, calming one's mind. "What do you think, little Lu? Are you satisfied?" Zhao Xian pointed at the waterside pavilion. Chapter 1086. P.S. Update complete. 10 times. Chu Li frowned. He was already feeling uncomfortable just standing there. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was desperately converting the inner energy of the cloud slashing power. The Mahavairokkana's Immobility Scripture was also resisting the pressure of the enlightened master's power. If the power was 10 times stronger, he really did not know how powerful it would be. He might not even be able to stand steadily. Hu Feixing said, "The guards at Chongwen Hall are old Zhao and old Su. They have 500 years of cultivation." Chu Li was shocked. It's really been 500 years. The lifespan of a grandmaster was usually around 300 years. The oldest could live up to 350 years. It seemed like that was the limit of their lifespan. No one could live past 500 years. How could this be fake? Hu Feixing scoffed and said, "They are only one step away from becoming an enlightened master. Unfortunately, this step is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Isn't it said that it's hard for heavenly gods to appear?" Chu Li frowned and said, "The news I heard is that there can only be 2 enlightened masters in a country, 1 civil and 1 military. Other than that, there won't be any other enlightened masters." "That's true in the outside world," Hu Feixing nodded. "But it's different in the imperial mausoleum." Chu Li was stunned. Hu Feixing said, "Look at these former emperors. They are all enlightened masters. Even though their souls have flown to the sky beyond heaven, their bodies are still circulating their heart techniques. They are still in the enlightened master realm." Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. Hu Feixing said, "Because the imperial mausoleum is equipped with extremely powerful formations and treasures, it can form a world of its own, unfettered by the rules of heaven and earth. If you want to become an Empyrean god, you have to do it inside the imperial mausoleum. You won't be able to become an Empyrean god outside. So even if I become an enlightened master, I can't go out." Chu Li frowned. Hu Feixing said, "As long as I become a heavenly deity, I won't violate the heavenly laws." Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. "In other words, once I become an enlightened master, I can leave the mausoleum and God won't care?" "Exactly," Hu Feixing said. "Elder Zhao and Elder Su have high hopes of taking the last step to become an enlightened master. Even if they can't leave the mausoleum after becoming an enlightened master, they can still ascend to heaven directly and step into the Grand Master's boundary. Chu Li sighed and nodded. No wonder they wanted to enter the inner mausoleum. It turned out that the chances of them becoming enlightened masters were extremely high, and it was not known to outsiders that they could not become enlightened masters. Hu Feixing said, "Do you think we're all fools? Why would we do something that has no hope? Let me tell you, other than the indestructible golden bodies of the previous emperors, there are also a few indestructible golden bodies of the inner mausoleum protectors." Chu Li was really surprised this time. 10 in total. Hu Feixing sighed. Outsiders do not know about these 10 Empyrean God Realm experts. Even when they left the Imperial tomb, they did not reveal their identities as Empyrean God Realm experts. No one knew about it. In the end, they came back here and returned to heavens beyond. Chu Li smiled bitterly. There are actually 10 of them. That's why we're all working hard to become the 11th heavenly god. Hu Feixing said, "Now that you know this, do you still want to return to God's capital?" Chu Li smiled bitterly. "I'm really short-sighted. That's why you should just obediently cultivate." Hu Feixing said, "Comprehend it with your heart. Maybe you can also become a heavenly god." Chu Li smiled and shook his head. If it were not for the fact that he was determined to defy nature and become a god, he might not have been able to resist staying in the inner mausoleum, ignoring King and continue to comprehend until he reached the enlightened mastery's boundary. With his comprehension, he did not believe that he was inferior to others. If someone could become an enlightened master, so could he. It seemed that he had underestimated this formation. No wonder he could not find the veins and flaws of the formation. He did not know which master had set up the formation, or was it purely a grandmaster's teaching? All right, comprehend it yourself. If you can move forward, do it yourself. Hu Feixing did not want to say more and sat on his cattail, hassock. Get as close as you can, as long as you don't touch the previous emperor. What if you touch the previous emperor? You'll be courting death. Hu Feixing closed his eyes and said, "The ancestors have the enlightened master's heart technique circulating in their bodies. If you touch them, it's no different from being hit by an enlightened master. There's no chance of survival. I advise you not to act recklessly." Chu Li Fist saluted and said no more. Hu Feixing chuckled and said no more. He had asked the same question when he first entered the inner mausoleum. He felt that he would soon be able to reach the previous emperor's golden body and touch the indestructible golden body. Only now did he realize how ignorant he was. Lu Shuzhou's question reminded him of himself in the past. He was ambitious and confident, thinking that he was the strongest and could do what others could not. Chu Li tried his best to circulate the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, and Mahavairocana's Immobility Scripture at the same time. Under the influence of the enlightened master's power, they circulated at a speed far faster than usual, allowing them to improve rapidly. However, Mahavairocana's Immobility Scripture and Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture were not easy to advance to the next level, but they were better than before. As for advancing to the next level, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. He did not know how long it would take. He did not have that much time to waste. Time waited for no man, and King N would not wait for him to get everything ready in peace. He took a step forward, and the pressure suddenly increased. Mahavairocana's Immobility Scripture and Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture circulated even faster. He paused for a moment to adjust slightly before he continued forward. He moved forward step by step. The potential of Mahavairocana's Immobility Scripture and Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was huge. With all his might, he managed to step within 100 feet, the same distance as Hu Feixing. Although Hu Feixing's eyes were closed, he had been paying attention to Chu Li. He was shocked when he saw Chu Li advancing to 100 feet so quickly. Then, under his shocked gaze, Chu Li continued to move forward. As he took a step forward, his body trembled slightly as if he was standing in a huge wave and was about to collapse at any time. After a while, he stabilized his body and adapted to it. Then he took another step forward. Step by step, Chu Li advanced 50 feet forward. After 50 feet, he no longer had the strength to move forward. He felt that Mahavairocana's immobility scripture and Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture had reached their limits. He could not go any further, so he stopped at 50 feet and meditated without moving. Time slowed down. He felt as if it was a year, as if he could not hold on any longer and would fly out. As the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture transformed, the cloud-slashing power inner energy in his body became more vigorous. He suddenly came up with an idea. Could he use the cloud-slashing power to activate his light body technique and leap onto the indestructible golden body? At the same time, he could use the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique to seize the enlightened master's energy and complete his mission. He could use this to kill King In. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was a neat idea. Step by step, he approached the invincible golden body. As he got closer, he felt that his speed was getting slower and slower. He was only 6 feet away, and it would take him a year to cross it. As for the final 10 feet, it might even take him 10 or 20 years. He could not afford that much time. King An might have already killed Seo Sure by then. What would be the point of killing him then? He had to kill King An before he dealt with the E-Public House. Otherwise, once King An died, the E-Public House would be implicated by the Emperor and would inevitably decline. As he thought about this, his Mahavairocana's immobility scripture and Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture sped up again. He was prepared to rush forward. However, he also understood that the moment he approached the indestructible golden body, the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, and Mahavairocana's immobility scripture, and Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture might collapse immediately. He might not be able to keep his life. After a while, he decided to take the risk. He still had the life and death scripture. This was the source of his confidence in taking risks. With that thought in mind, he leaped up and shot towards the stairs like a stone. Bang! With a muffled sound, he stopped when he was 20 feet away from the indestructible golden body. Then, he flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. He immediately fainted. Hu Feixing was dumbfounded as he watched Chu Li fly over and fly back. He fell heavily onto the green brick floor and fainted. He never thought that Chu Li would do such a stupid thing. Anyone with a little bit of rationality would not do such a thing. This was courting death. He really did not want to live anymore. When Chu Li woke up, he was lying in his waterside pavilion. The bright sunlight shone into the waterside pavilion and fell on the window. There was no one else in the waterside pavilion. He got up with difficulty. He had a splitting headache, and all his divine powers had disappeared. He could not open the void in his mind. His body was fine. The cloud-slashing power's inner energy was still there. It was just that his internal organs were slightly injured and his body was weak. Chapter 1087. Even if his martial arts were crippled, he still had the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. Even if the void of his mind was severely damaged, he still had the heavenly demonic stone. Even if he lost his life, he still had the life and death scripture. Since he had nothing to fear, he naturally wanted to take the risk. Fortunately, his martial arts were not crippled, but he could not use his divine arts. The void of his mind was sealed once again. He did not know if it was broken or if he was temporarily injured, but he was not that worried. He took out the demonic stone pillow and laid his head on it. Cold air entered his mind, as if he had drunk a bowl of sour plum juice under the scorching sun. The heavenly demonic stone pillow was placed on the back of his head. The other heavenly demonic stone, which was used to perform the demon hunting technique, was much smaller. He tied it with a knot and wore it around his neck, nourishing his spirit. With the two superimposed, the effect was multiplied. He estimated that it wouldn't take long for him to recover. He had seen the aura of the heavenly demon statue, and it was not inferior to the might of an enlightened god. Therefore, the power of an enlightened god's attack might not be comparable to the heavenly demon statue. A moment later, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Zhao Xian and Su Jinshan appeared in the waterside pavilion. Their faces were gloomy and their eyes were cold. Chu Li stood up and gave a fist salute. "Not bad. Little Lu, you've got guts." Zhao Xuanbai's plump face seemed to be smiling. "You're pretty tough, too." The skinny Su Jinshan stared at him coldly with a straight face. Chu Li smiled bitterly. "I didn't expect the indestructible golden body to be so powerful." Su Jinshan said coldly, "Do you know that you've broken the rules of the inner mausoleum protectors?" Chu Li asked, "What prohibition?" "Xiao Hu didn't tell you?" Su Jinshan frowned. Chu Li shook his head. He knew that the situation was serious, and at this time, he could only grasp this point. Those who did not know were not guilty, and even if they were guilty, they would be pardoned. Su Jinshan turned to look at Zhao Xian. Zhao Xian smiled bitterly and said, "It's very likely that Little Hu still has a knot in his heart about Little Lu. Maybe he doesn't think that Little Lu would do this. This is no different from suicide." "Yes." Su Jinshan nodded slowly and said, "If that's the case, then I'll make it clear to you. The inner mausoleum protectors guard the heavenly god's golden body to prevent anyone from breaking in and destroying it." Chu Li interrupted him and asked in surprise, "There's someone who can destroy an enlightened master's golden body. You think I can't?" Su Jinshan said coldly. Chu Li pondered for a moment and slowly nodded. "Yes." Zhao Xian laughed. "Little Lu, if it were you, what would you do?" "There are many ways." Chu Li said, "Like using hidden weapons or arrows directly. The enlightened master's aura can stop martial arts masters from approaching, but it can't stop hidden weapons from approaching. Right?" "Smart." Zhao Xian smiled and nodded. Su Jinshan said coldly, "As an inner mausoleum protector, one of the benefits is that you can study the power of an enlightened master up close. From there, you can understand the secrets of an enlightened master and enter the enlightened master's boundary. Although you can't go out and do whatever you want, you can be free and unfettered. Or you can directly ascend to the outland, transcend reincarnation, and obtain the longevity of a deva." There was another world above the heaven beyond heaven where celestials lived. They lived for tens of thousands of years. And even if they died, they could directly return to the heaven beyond heaven. Ordinary people would enter the cycle of reincarnation after death and might not even be able to live as humans in their next life. Chu Li nodded. Su Jinshan said, "But we inner mausoleum protectors have one of the most fundamental and unbreakable prohibitions, which is not to touch the enlightened master's golden body. This is disrespectful to the late emperor, so those who touch the enlightened master's golden body are directly expelled from the inner mausoleum." Chu Li was stunned. "Expelled from the inner mausoleum? That's right." Su Jinshan said in a low voice, "And you can never enter the inner mausoleum." "I'm so wronged." Chu Li smiled bitterly. "I didn't touch the enlightened master's golden body at all." Su Jinshan scoffed. "Fortunately, you didn't touch it." Chu Li suddenly let out a long sigh of relief, knowing that there was still room for change. He hurriedly said, "Elder Su, what's the punishment?" Su Jinshan said, "You're not allowed to enter the inner mausoleum for a year." Chu Li suddenly looked bitter. He was secretly anxious. Not being able to enter the inner mausoleum for a year was really terrible. Zhao Xian smiled. "Young Lu, you haven't recovered from your injuries. You can recuperate now. This is both a punishment and a protection for you." Chu Li smiled bitterly. "If I'm not allowed to enter the inner mausoleum for a year, I might as well be killed. Do you like the inner mausoleum that much?" Zhao Xian smiled. "For most people, the inner mausoleum is a painful place." Chu Li shook his head. "I have the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, which can remove the enlightened Master's power. Moreover, the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture has advanced very quickly, and my cultivation level has increased greatly. This is a critical time. How can I not enter the inner mausoleum? There's no other way. You've done something wrong." Zhao Xian shook his head. Chu Li coughed softly. "Actually, Elder Su and Elder Zhao are mistaken." "What mistake?" Zhao Xian smiled. Su Jinshan looked at him. Chu Li said, "I didn't want to touch the enlightened Master's golden body. I just wanted to test the enlightened Master's power. I had no intention of touching the enlightened Master's golden body." Zhao Xian was stunned and looked at Su Jinshan. Su Jinshan frowned. Chu Li hurriedly said, "Of course I know I can't touch the golden body. I'm just trying to see how far I can go. I didn't expect the golden body's power to be so powerful. I can't go any further than 30 feet. I heard that Elder Su can go 10 feet away from the enlightened Master's golden body. He's the first person in the inner mausoleum." "Not bad, young man. You know this." Zhao Xian smiled. Chu Li said, "Of course I can't compare to Elder Su's 500 years of cultivation, so I wanted to see how close I could get." "Really?" Zhao Xian asked deliberately. He turned to look at Su Jinshan. "Young Lu is really naughty. He's a young man indeed, quick-witted and lively." Su Jinshan scoffed. Both he and Zhao Xian knew that Chu Li was talking nonsense. However, such a statement could be justified without any flaws. The most important thing was that he really did not touch the enlightened Master's golden body, so he did not violate the prohibition. Zhao Xian smiled. "Look at how badly injured young Lu is. He probably won't recover in a month or two. It's the price of being naughty. Why don't we just forget about it? His injuries are already punishment." Chu Li hurriedly fist saluted and said seriously, "Elder Su, I'll restrain myself in the future." "Don't." Zhao Xian grinned. "The inner mausoleum is getting boring. It's rare to see someone as lively as you." He looked at Su Jinshan. "Isn't that right, Elder Su?" Su Jinshan frowned at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled at Su Jinshan. The punishment was indeed up to Su Jinshan. If he did not touch the enlightened Master's golden body, he would have to be punished according to his motive. He could say anything he wanted. "This matter needs to be discussed with everyone," Su Jinshan said in a low voice. "Elder Su, what's there to discuss? You can decide on such a small matter." Zhao Xian grinned. "It's not a big deal. No one will have any objections." "All right." Su Jinshan shook his head. "Only this once. If there's a next time, there's really no way to make an exception." "Thank you, Elder Su." Chu Li was overjoyed. Su Jinshan said, "The next time you encounter the golden body, don't say you don't know. It's useless even if you don't know." "Yes." Chu Li solemnly fist saluted. Chapter 1088. After the two left, Chu Li lay quietly on the heavenly demonic stone pillow to recover from his injuries. He sighed to himself. An enlightened master was so terrifying. It seemed that he had underestimated an enlightened master. Before he could even get close, his mind's void was already destroyed. He had taken it for granted. He thought that after killing King En, he could withstand the emperor's attack and use his divine power to escape to the Fu dynasty's Jian and kingdom. He could then escape unscathed. Now, he realized that he had been too optimistic. An enlightened master's attack was not only about inner energy, but also spiritual energy. Even if he was not seriously injured, his mind's void would probably be destroyed. He would not be able to use his divine power at all. How could he escape? It seemed that divine power was not enough against an enlightened master. He had to prepare for two things. First, he had to strengthen his soul energy. Second, he had to cultivate his heavenly demonic power to the level of heavenly demonic sect leader Fu Qingya. Even without his divine power, he could rely on his heavenly demonic power to escape from an enlightened master's attack. On the evening of the second day, the setting sun illuminated the waterside pavilion. The lake was like a brocade, sparkling like a red brocade. It was beautiful and moving. Chu Li stepped out of the waterside pavilion and came to the veranda above the lake. He leaned against the railing and looked at the fish in the lake thoughtfully. His mind's void had recovered and was even stronger than before. There could be no construction without destruction. His mind's void kept getting stronger as it crumbled again and again. Did he have to cultivate his mind's void like this? Or was it because he cultivated 4 scriptures and 1 mirror and even a life and death scripture? However, he knew that if he wanted to withstand the emperor's attack, his mind's void had to keep growing until he could get close to an enlightened master in Chongwen Hall without collapsing. He subconsciously activated the omniscient mirror and was instantly stunned. He smiled. The omniscient mirror could leave his body. Although it could only observe a 1-meter radius from his body, it was significant. If the omniscient mirror could leave his body, it meant that he could use his divine power to counteract the suppression of formations and treasures. Unfortunately, if he wanted to use God's limbs, he had to observe at least 5 miles. Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture had improved again. It could resist formations and treasures that suppressed divine power. This meant that he was on the right path. If he could freely use divine power in the inner mausoleum, it would be much easier to obtain enlightened master's energy. When he thought of King, and he got up and slowly walked out of the imperial garden, leaving the outer mausoleum. As soon as Chu Li stepped out of the outer mausoleum's main gate, his body instantly felt relaxed. His omniscient mirror immediately scanned the area within a radius of 10 miles, including the entire adjacent town. He saw his own residence, Xiao Qi, and a graceful woman in white in the residence. Although her face was covered with a white veil, he recognized Lu Yurong at first glance. He smiled and returned to Lu Shuzhou's residence before vanishing in a flash and reappearing in his own residence. Under the sunset glow, Xiao Qi and Lu Yurong were having a duel. Their white shadows fluttered, and their swords flashed, but their figures could not be seen clearly. One of them used a sword, while the other used a palm. Their movements were as graceful as a dance. Chu Li was surprised. He did not expect Xiao Qi's martial arts to improve so much. Lu Yurong's Empyrean fairy heart scripture was miraculous, and her comprehension was amazing. Her cultivation level was very high, and her martial arts was one of the best among the younger generation. In the past, she had always suppressed Xiao Qi, but now she could not suppress Xiao Qi. It was not that her cultivation level did not improve, but Xiao Qi's improvement was faster. Chu Li clapped his hands and applauded. Lu Yurong flew away, gracefully, and removed the white veil that covered her face, revealing her charming face. Her eyes were as clear as autumn water, and they were soul-stirring. Xiao Qi sheathed her sword. Chu Li clapped his hands and praised, "Miss Yurong, your palm technique is getting better." Lu Yurong frowned as she studied Chu Li. She realized that Chu Li had changed so much that she could not see through him. He was like a mountain or a sea, and it was as if he could swallow her at any time. She even had the urge to worship him. He was obviously much stronger than her. Not only was his cultivation level not affected when he was trapped in adjacent town, but he had also become much stronger. She was no longer on the same level as him. It seemed like she had to return to isolated cultivation. Xiao Qi turned around and brought out 3 cups of tea. She placed them on the stone table in the gazebo. Lu Yurong sat by the stone table and took a sip of tea. She looked at Chu Li. "Did you have another fortuitous encounter?" Chu Li smiled. "I did have some enlightenment. You can improve your martial arts skills here." Lu Yurong scoffed. Chu Li smiled. "There's nothing to worry about here. It's a peaceful place to practice martial arts, and a beauty to accompany you." Lu Yurong scoffed. "All right, I failed the task you asked me to do." "Why? You couldn't hurt him?" Chu Li frowned. Lu Yurong scoffed. "Not only did I not hurt him, I was almost caught by him. This guy is very powerful now. You might not be able to defeat him in the past." Chu Li frowned. "What martial arts does he practice?" "I don't know." Lu Yurong shook her head. "His inner energy is deep and firm." Chapter 1089. Chu Li returned to the inner mausoleum and went to a basilica in Jingtian Pavilion. After greeting Hu Feixing, he stood still. The monstrous aura kept pressing down on him, but he kept moving forward as if he was going against the current. Every step almost made him faint. The heavenly demonic stone hung on his chest. A steady stream of cool air nourished his mind and kept him awake. The giant Buddha and the heavenly demon chanted desperately under the heavy pressure. Their speed was 10 times faster than usual. Lotuses of various colors merged into the giant Buddha and the heavenly demon, making them more solid and their soul energy stronger. Chu Li felt that this extreme state was the most suitable for cultivation. However, without the omniscient mirror, he would not be able to maintain this state without such a clear mind. Wisps of cool air were used by the omniscient mirror to maintain the extreme state. He slowly took another step forward. The giant Buddha and the heavenly demon's speed increased to 20 times their usual speed. Countless lotus flowers danced in the air, filling the entire space of his mind with lotus flowers. They landed on the giant Buddha and the heavenly demon, and the soul power grew stronger and stronger. Hu Feixing's eyes widened in disbelief as Chu Li approached the indestructible golden body. 60 feet, 50 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet. When he was 20 feet away, he did not pass out. His body trembled, but he did not fall. Then 10 feet. Finally, he stood at the bottom of the steps. Chu Li reached the bottom of the steps. It seemed like he had reached his limit. Hu Feixing let out a long sigh. He did not know how to take another step forward. It was too fast. Lu Shuzhou seemed to have become a completely different person. Did his injuries increase his strength? After 10 minutes, Chu Li took a step up the steps. "Wait!" Hu Feixing shouted. Chu Li turned to look at him. His eyes were bloodshot. He was being oppressed by an invisible force. He was trying his best not to fall. The Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture was converting desperately. The inner energy of the cloud's slashing power was so pure that it pressured his meridians. Hu Feixing said, "We inner mausoleum protectors can't touch the golden body." Chu Li replied, "Of course." "Then why are you going up the steps?" Hu Feixing asked. Chu Li's voice was hoarse. "To see how close I can get." "Then be careful." Hu Feixing scoffed. Don't blame me for being merciless if you touch it. Chu Li took a deep look at him and slowly took another step. With every step he took, the pressure around him increased by a fraction. The earth matrix and reincarnation scripture protected his body while the giant Buddha and heavenly devil chanted the scripture in his mind with all their might, causing his soul to grow stronger by leaps and bounds. He could feel that the strength of his soul did not only come from the 4 meridians and 1 mirror, but also from the power of the heavenly demonic stone. The cool air of the heavenly demonic stone could only replenish the loss of his soul, but it could not strengthen it. However, under such extreme conditions, it could strengthen his soul. If it wasn't for the heavenly demonic stone, he wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long, no matter how powerful he was. His soul wouldn't have strengthened so quickly either. From the looks of it, the heavenly demonic stone was indeed a mystical item. He had to obtain the heavenly demonic sex, heavenly demon statue. The last time he was defeated by the heavenly demon statue, his soul had improved tremendously after he woke up. This time, after being defeated by the enlightened god's aura, his soul had also improved slightly after he woke up. However, it was still far from the damage he received from the heavenly demon statue. It was most likely due to the heavenly demonic stone. The first step, the second step, the third step, the fourth step. Chu Li stopped at the 9th step. If he went any further, he would have to face the enlightened master's golden body. He stood motionless on the 9th step. The energy of the heavenly demonic stone desperately entered his mind and strengthened his soul. Suddenly, the omniscient mirror leaped out and could leave his body to observe the outside world. The pressure here was far greater than the outer mausoleum. The formation and divine power suppression treasures were even more powerful. The fact that the omniscient mirror could leave his body showed how strong his soul was. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. A set of heart technique automatically appeared in his mind. It was passed down by the heavenly demon. The extremely pure inner energy of the cloud slashing power suddenly changed its route and circulated along the heavenly demon heart technique that he had just obtained. Previously, he only inherited the heavenly demonic orb and the heavenly demon scripture, so he could only use the devouring technique to cultivate. This set of heart technique was extremely mysterious. The inner energy that circulated along this heart technique could be absorbed into the heavenly demonic orb to strengthen the cultivation of the heavenly demonic power. With this set of heavenly demonic heart technique, the heavenly demonic orb changed from a picky eater to an omnivorous one. Originally, it only devoured pure energy and did not care about anything less. Now it could enter the heavenly demonic orb through the cultivation of inner energy. He was overjoyed. With the life and death scripture, he had no lack of inner energy. He could directly convert the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the inner energy of the heavenly demonic heart technique. Then he could continuously replenish the heavenly demonic orb. This way, the progress of the heavenly demonic power would be extremely fast. The inner energy that the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture converted into the enlightened master's might could also be directly converted into the inner energy of the heavenly demonic heart technique. This way, the advancement of the heavenly demonic power would be extremely fast. He was excited. After suffering for so long, he finally saw a glimmer of hope. "You want to enter Chongwen Hall?" Su Jinshan frowned at Chu Li. Everyone was sitting in the basilica of the meeting room. When they heard Chu Li's words, they all looked at him. Chu Li slowly said, "Yes, I want to see Chongwen Hall." It was the morning of the second day. They were assigning tasks when Chu Li interrupted and asked to be on duty in Chongwen Hall. This surprised everyone. "Do you know that you're courting death?" Su Jinshan scoffed. Chu Li said, I can already walk to the side of the late second emperor. Su Jinshan looked at Hu Feixing. Hu Feixing nodded reluctantly. He reached the 9th step. Everyone's gaze changed from ridicule to curiosity. They had all climbed up from Jing Tian Pavilion step by step and knew how difficult the process was. They did not expect Chu Li to finish the journey that they had taken years to complete in just a few days. Su Jinshan said, "Then you'll be on duty in the 3rd Emperor's Hall." Chu Li said, "I want to see Chongwen Hall first." "All right, looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson." Su Jinshan finally agreed and said, "But you must be prepared to get hurt. I'm afraid you won't be able to recover in a year and a half." "It's all right," Chu Li said. Everyone's gaze turned to ridicule again. It was as if they could already see Chu Li vomiting blood and flying out of Chongwen Hall. "The rest will be done according to the rules. Young Lu, come with me." Su Jinshan left the armchair. "Yes." Chu Li fist saluted and followed Su Jinshan out of the meeting room to the front of Chongwen Hall. As soon as Su Jinshan opened the door, Chu Li felt a raging wave rushing at him like a flood that was about to blow him away. His face was flushed red. The giant Buddha and the heavenly demon chanted mantras madly. The earth matrix and reincarnation scripture circulated with all their might and turned into inner energy that flowed along the heavenly demon's heart technique before entering the heavenly demonic orb. Su Jinshan looked at Chu Li, who was standing still at the door, with a faint smile. He wanted to see if Chu Li could step into the hall. This was only the first stage. Judging from Chu Li's posture, he did not have much hope. The power at the door was worlds apart from the inside of the hall. Chu Li was already struggling at the door and could not enter at all. Chu Li slowly took a step forward. It was as if he was carrying a mountain. Su Jinshan entered without closing the door. Chapter 1090. Chu Li felt like a blade of grass in a mountain torrent, swaying from the impact of the flood. He was unsteady, but he did not break. His vision darkened, but his willpower grew stronger. The omniscient mirror seemed to be polished until it shone brighter and more flawless, and his mind became clearer. The cool air from the heavenly demonic stone in his chest grew thicker. His mind was like the heavenly demonic orb, which had the ability to devour. It kept devouring the cool air, and the void of his mind grew stronger. He was approaching the enlightened master's golden body step by step in the inner mausoleum. His inner energy cultivation level did not increase much, but his soul was much stronger, advancing by leaps and bounds. The giant Buddha and the heavenly demon became clearer. Their facial features became more exquisite and real. The lines of their skin could be seen clearly as if they were really alive. His body became stronger, and his heavenly demonic body and divine light body improved. With every step he took, his strength increased by leaps and bounds, undergoing earth-shattering changes. He lifted his foot and stepped over the threshold. The surging power reached its peak, and he was almost flattened. His vision turned black, and his foot was stuck in the air for a long time. He didn't want to retreat, but he didn't want to. After a long time, he finally stepped over the threshold. He lifted his other foot and stepped over. The pressure around him suddenly decreased, and he stood firmly. There were already 4 elders sitting in Chongwen Hall, looking at him in surprise. They did not expect him to really step in. The most difficult obstacle was the threshold. It was difficult for those with a weak cultivation level to step over. Once they did, they could stand firm. Even if they could not get close to the enlightened master's golden body, they could still hold on in the hall. This was the beauty of the formation. Su Jinshan nodded in satisfaction. He did not expect Chu Li to advance so much. He really had unlimited potential. Such a person could only be called a genius among geniuses. Chu Li looked at the indestructible golden body in Chong, one hall. There was a dragon table on the 9 steps in the middle of the hall. A middle-aged man sat on the dragon chair behind the table. He was handsome, and his beard fluttered in the wind. His eyes were slightly closed, as if he was thinking. His skin was as smooth as white jade, glowing. His body emitted a torrential aura that made people's hearts palpitate. Chu Li did not stop moving forward. Step by step, he would take a small step forward every short while. Although his strides were small, he did not stop. 150 feet, 14 feet, 13 feet, all the way until he reached 50 feet. He was sweating profusely, and white steam was rising from his body. It seemed like he was competing with someone with inner energy. His eyes were slightly closed, and his expression could not be seen clearly. He was on the verge of collapsing at any moment, but he persisted. He was unusually tenacious, and the 4 elders sighed inwardly. This little Lu not only had shocking potential, but he also had an iron will. Youngsters nowadays were really amazing. For the next 7 days, Chu Li went to Chongwen Hall every day. Step by step, he inched closer to the indestructible golden body. Finally, he was 10 feet away from it, the same distance as Su Jinshan. No matter how hard he tried, he could not get any closer. The last 3 meters was like a heavenly moat, and its might was so dense that it seemed material, causing his body to be unable to move. There was only one heavenly demonic stone left in his chest. These days, he cut the heavenly demonic stone pillow into pieces and wore them around his neck. He consumed 1 heavenly demonic stone a day, and the heavenly demonic stone turned from black as ink to white as jade. The feeling of merging with the giant Buddha and heavenly demonic water body in the void of his mind became clearer. It was as if he was the heavenly demon and the Buddha, and he was chanting the 4 scriptures in the void. The void of his mind became bigger and wider, and it was boundless. The speed at which the Buddha and the heavenly demon chanted the scriptures slowed down, and it was no different from the speed at which they spoke. However, the lotus flowers that were spat out from each word were extremely clear, and they emitted a brilliant brilliance. After merging with his body, he could clearly feel that he had become stronger. Unknowingly, his heavenly demonic power had reached Fu Qingya's level. The heavenly demonic orb turned into a heavenly demonic field that covered 100 feet around him. He could move freely within this 100 feet, and with a single thought, his body would be there. He had truly achieved the heavenly demon's freedom. Although he ignored the divine light body, the level of the divine light body had also increased. Although the transformation of the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture was faster, there was no qualitative change, and it required a deeper understanding. He focused all his attention on the heavenly demonic power, so he did not have the mood to study the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. Among the 4 scriptures, the Mahavairocana's immobility scripture improved the fastest. The halo behind the giant Buddha's head became so bright that it could not be looked at directly. It was enough to offset the formation and the treasures that suppressed divine power. With the strengthening of his soul, he speculated that the range of the omniscient mirror and the life and death scripture had increased by a shocking amount, and it might have reached 100 miles. As the last bit of cold air entered his mind, the heavenly demonic stone was completely used up. The distance of 10 feet was like a natural moat in front of him, and he could not break through it. He tried to lift one of his feet, but he could not put it down for a long time. The surging force kept pushing him back. He tried to put down his foot, and suddenly his whole body creaked. He was bleeding from all his orifices, and his face was horrifying. Su Jinshan, who was opposite him, shook his head with a regretful expression. Su Jinshan stayed at the last 10 feet for 5 years, and he did not step forward. However, he was not in a hurry. 500 years had passed, and he felt that he was not far from it. There was only the last window paper, and once he broke through it, he could become an enlightened master. As he approached the enlightened master's golden body step by step, the most important thing was to understand the wonders of the enlightened master, not power. The most important thing was to slow down, not fast. Lu Shuzhou's cultivation level was not as profound as his, but his soul was strong. This was a unique advantage. If the two of them were to fight, he could easily defeat Lu Shuzhou, but in terms of resisting the enlightened master's power, Lu Shuzhou was stronger. However, no matter how strong Lu Shuzhou was, it was a waste of God's gift to rush for quick success. Every step would give him a unique understanding, and he had to completely digest this understanding before he could move on to the next step unhurriedly and have a new understanding. For hundreds of years, he had approached the enlightened master's golden body step by step, and he was almost at the threshold of the enlightened master. As for Lu Shuzhou, although he had reached the enlightened master's golden body, he could not comprehend it in time. If he were to repeat the process, it would be difficult to trigger his spiritual opportunity, which meant that his path to the enlightened master was broken. It was truly a pity. Perhaps the souls of the people in the hall were not as strong as his and could not advance as quickly, but if they wanted to, they would have reached the enlightened master's golden body a long time ago. If they could, they would not. Not only did they not seek to be fast, but they sought to be slow, afraid that each step would be too short and the understanding would be too little. He had indeed gone astray, but unfortunately, he did not listen to his reminders. Everyone had their own fate, and it could not be forced. It could only be said that he was not fated to become an enlightened master in this lifetime. Buzz. Chu Li suddenly formed a seal with both hands and uttered a word. There seemed to be an invisible force spreading in front of him. Chu Li took the opportunity to take a big step forward and stood firmly. Mu. Chu Li formed another seal and took another step forward. The enlightened master's golden body was within reach. He slowly reached out. No, Su Jinshan shouted, his voice like thunder. Chapter 10:91. Bam! With a muffled sound, Chu Li flew backward and crashed into the bronze window. An elder waved his hand. Chu Li did not crash into the window, but flew in front of him. Don't touch him, Su Jinshan yelled. The elder put his hand down. Chu Li fell to the ground and lay straight. Su Jinshan checked Chu Li's pulse, then pressed on his chest and forehead. He looked up at the three elders and shook his head. He's dead. Dead. The three frowned. Su Jinshan let go and gestured for them to try. After they checked him one by one, they shook their heads and sighed. This young man was a genius. It's such a shame that he died like this. A tall and sturdy old man with white eyebrows and beard sighed and said, although he is a little eager for quick success, the strength of his divine soul is really rare. This is the first time I've heard of someone being able to encounter an Empyrean god's golden body in such a short time. He was hit by an enlightened master. A tall and thin elder scoffed. How can the enlightened master's energy be so easily touched? Who in this world can withstand an enlightened master's attack? He was courting death. A round-faced elder shook his head. Didn't he know that an enlightened master's golden body contains the enlightened master's energy? He's a smart man. This is suicide, but it's a unique way of committing suicide. The three of them nodded. As long as one was not a fool, they would know that the inner energy in the enlightened master's golden body flowed. Anyone who touched it would suffer an enlightened master's energy. Touching it would mean certain death. Yet, he insisted on touching it. It looked like he was courting death. What a pity, Su Jinshan sighed. He was a genius. Countless geniuses have died in this world. The tall and thin elder scoffed. He wanted to die. Who can stop him? But this way of death is indeed unique. What should we do with him? Send him out of the inner mausoleum and bury him outside adjacent town. Su Jinshan shook his head. Anyone who touches an enlightened master's golden body can never enter the inner mausoleum. This is a forbidden rule. Even if he dies, he won't be exempted from punishment. He can't be buried in the inner mausoleum. Ah, that's good too. I think he always wanted to go back. The round-faced elder sighed. It's no wonder. He's still young. How can he be willing to stay in the inner mausoleum forever? He's different from us old men. The four of them were somewhat moved. Su Jinshan brought Chu Li's stiff corpse out of Chong Wen Hall. Zhao Xian came over and looked at Chu Li's corpse with a look of pity. He thought highly of Chu Li and felt that this young Lu had a high chance of becoming an enlightened master. Unfortunately, he had died so soon, and they hadn't gotten to know each other better. Old Zhao, the dead can't be brought back to life. Even though he suffered a blow from an enlightened master and no medicine can save him, we still have to be careful. Let him go to Jingtian Pavilion first. After 7 days, send him out of the imperial mausoleum and bury him outside adjacent town. Yes. Zhao Xian nodded. He carried Chu Li into a hall in Jingtian Pavilion. This hall was abnormally cold, and the corpses wouldn't rot if they were placed here. 7 days later, Zhao Xian arrived and saw that Chu Li's corpse was as stiff as a rock. There were no abnormalities, so he left the imperial mausoleum and went straight to a cemetery outside adjacent town. He found a coffin and buried Chu Li in it. Then he planted 3 pine trees at the head of the pit and erected a grave for Lu Shuzhou. Once he was done, Zhao Xian drank a few mouthfuls of wine in front of the grave and poured it over the grave. He shook his head and sighed before he fluttered away. Early in the morning, Shao Qi left the wing room with a tired look and went to the courtyard. The courtyard was very quiet. Other than the crisp chirping of birds, there was no other sound. She was not used to not having Chu Li by her side. Even if Chu Li was meditating on the bed in the house, she would feel at peace. She knew that Chu Li had entered the inner mausoleum as Lu Shuzhou to explore the secret of the mausoleum and know his enemy, so that he could face the emperor. However, 7 days had passed, and he had not returned. This was an extremely rare situation. Shao Qi's intuition was sharp, and she had been restless for the past 7 days. She had a sudden and ominous feeling that something had happened to Chu Li. However, the inner mausoleum was a place that she could not reach, and news from the mausoleum could not spread out. She did not sleep well last night. Whenever she closed her eyes, the scene of Chu Li's death kept appearing in her mind. Therefore, she could only get up and meditate to get rid of the distracting thoughts. However, the thought that something had happened to Chu Li kept popping up and disturbing her from time to time, making her unable to control herself. She felt that something was wrong and could not help but ask someone to find out about Lu Shuzhou. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Come in. Shao Qi put on a white veil, covering her beautiful face. The main door of the residence was pushed open. Soon, a handsome servant entered and said in a low voice, "Madam, I've heard news about Lu Shuzhou." "Where is he?" Shao Qi asked, her gaze fixed on the servant. He was a servant from a restaurant in adjacent town. He was her informant and was considered loyal. The servant replied, "He's dead. An inner mausoleum protector with the surname Zhao bought a coffin for him and buried him in the cemetery outside the town. He's dead. Xiaoqi's eyes flashed as she replied. The servant nodded. Old man, Li from the coffin shop, told me. He saw it with his own eyes. He said that he's been dead for 7 days. He hasn't rotted yet, but it'll be soon. Xiaoqi nodded calmly. All right, I understand. You may go. She took out a silver ingot from her sleeve and tossed it to the servant. The servant hurriedly thanked her and quietly left the residence, closing the main door. Xiaoqi waited for him to leave before she slowly stood up with the help of the stone table. Her body went limp and her graceful body trembled slightly. She took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down, but she could not do it. There were only 2 words in her mind. Dead, dead, dead. She could not believe the news. Deep in her mind, she was very confident in Chu Li. Even if everyone else died, he would not. His martial arts skills were top-notch, and he was smarter than others. No matter when or how difficult the situation was, he would always have a way to escape. He would not die even if he faced an enlightened master. However, after 7 days of suffering, she had an ominous feeling. When she heard this news, she could not resist it and could only believe it. She did not want to believe it and was unwilling to believe it. There were too many things that Chu Li had yet to do. His painstaking efforts had not killed King An. He had not become an enlightened master. He had not dominated the world. He had not married her completely. He did not have children. And he had not enjoyed the bliss of a family. He had been busy all day long for the High Duke's public house, for her and her second eldest sister. But he had nothing. He had not stopped to enjoy anything. She could not believe that Chu Li would leave her one day, that she would not be able to see him again. One day. She clutched her chest as if a sword was mercilessly twisting it. Uffed. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. The white veil was dyed red. The white veil was removed and thrown aside. She opened her mouth, but could not make a sound. It was as if the pain was tearing her into pieces, but she could not make a sound. The world had lost its color, and her ears had lost their sense of hearing. Suddenly, Chu Li's figure flashed in her eyes. Chu Li seemed to be sitting at the stone table. He slowly picked up the teacup and took a sip, smiling at her. Uffed. She spat out another mouthful of blood and swayed. Chapter 1092. P.S. Update complete. As soon as she thought of this, she became spirited and kept telling herself that the person who died was not Chu Li, but the real Lu Shuzhou. Although Chu Li had sent Lu Shuzhou to the Fu dynasty, he might have already returned. She forced herself not to consider the flaws in this thought and glided away from adjacent town. Soon, she found Lu Shuzhou's grave. Looking at the newly carved stone, she took a deep breath and began to dig without caring if there was anyone around. She moved quickly and soon found the coffin. When she opened it, she saw a corpse lying inside. It was Chu Li, who was disguised as Lu Shuzhou. Xiaoqi's white gown was stained with mud, but she did not care as she was a neat freak. She jumped into the coffin and stared at Chu Li's face. After a while, she slowly extended her muddy hand and lifted Chu Li's left ear to see the 2 moles. Tears gushed out like spring water and dripped onto Chu Li's face. She was finally sure that this was Chu Li and not Lu Shuzhou. At that moment, she finally gave up. Chu Li had once joked that if he were to die, he would not necessarily change his face. However, the 2 moles behind his left ear could not be changed. She could use these 2 moles to confirm his true identity. She could no longer support her own body. She leaned on Chu Li's body and wept silently. Her tears dripped onto Chu Li's face. She reached out to wipe them away. as she caressed his cold face. Her tears flowed even faster. Amidst her teary eyes, she suddenly kissed Chu Li's purple lips, which were cold and hard. She was upset and in pain. She had always been reserved and could not fulfill his wish when he was alive. Although they were husband and wife in name, they were not husband and wife. A gust of wind suddenly appeared and fluttered her white gown. She ignored it and continued to kiss Chu Li's lips. However, the wind grew stronger. The pine tree in front of the grave swayed and was blown down, causing sand and pebbles to fly. Xiaoqi's white gown fluttered and her hair flew. Puzzled, she withdrew her lips and turned to look. She noticed something strange. All the wind seemed to be blowing toward her. A whirlwind formed above the grave, causing leaves and flowers to spin rapidly in the air. She lowered her head to look at Chu Li. Chu Li's hair fluttered in the wind, and his expression changed. She could feel a trace of warmth coming from Chu Li's hand. His skin seemed to have turned from a hard and bruised green to a soft, rosy hue. His complexion also quickly faded away and became rosy again. She quickly placed her hand on Chu Li's wrist and felt a pulse. She was overjoyed. Chu Li had only faked his death, but he was coming back to life. The whirlwind suddenly disappeared. The flowers and leaves fell and covered Chu Li and Xiaoqi's bodies. She stared at Chu Li and watched as he slowly opened his eyes and exhaled a puff of white air. His eyes turned from blank to clear, and then he smiled. Tears streamed down her cheeks like a broken dam. She gripped Chu Li's wrist tightly. Chu Li reached out his hand and wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. He smiled and said, "You thought I was dead?" Xiaoqi punched Chu Li's chest hard. Chu Li held her hand and disappeared into the coffin. The two of them appeared outside the grave. Chu Li pushed his palm forward, and the coffin was immediately closed. The soil covered the coffin, and the grave mound returned to normal. Then, the two of them disappeared in a flash and reappeared in their own residence. They first went to wash up and changed into new clothes. Chu Li returned to his original appearance and changed into a green robe. Xiaoqi also changed into a snow-white gown. She had once again regained her untainted coldness and otherworldly appearance. Chu Li called out to her. Chu Li sat cross-legged on the bed. Xiaoqi frowned when she saw his dispirited expression. "Haven't you recovered from your injuries?" "It's fine." Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "I took an enlightened master's energy and haven't recovered yet. An enlightened master is indeed an enlightened master." Xiaoqi frowned. "Don't go anymore." Chu Li nodded. "Yes, you don't have to go anymore. Lu Shuzhou is dead." "What happened?" Xiaoqi asked. Chu Li told her what happened, and Xiaoqi furrowed her brows. "I'm lucky. I won't die so easily." Chu Li smiled. "Don't worry." "Who's worried?" Xiaoqi scoffed. She looked deeply at Chu Li. Her heart was filled with joy from regaining what she had lost. Her eyes were bright and sparkling. Chu Li reached out and pulled her into his arms. She took the opportunity to fall into his arms. Chu Li hugged her soft and fragrant body tightly and was intoxicated. He sighed. "Before I die, you're the one who flashed in front of me. I can't let you go." Xiaoqi hugged him tightly without saying a word. Chu Li cupped her face and covered her red lips. Xiaoqi closed her eyes, and her slender eyebrows trembled. Chu Li slowly placed her on the bed and pressed his body against hers. The sun was shining brightly outside, and the spring scenery inside was boundless. The bright sunlight illuminated the house. Xiaoqi was lying on Chu Li's big bed. A brocade quilt covered her graceful body. Her loose hair was as smooth as black satin, and her face was as fair as jade. It was as if a layer of rouge had been applied on her white jade, making her look delicate and alluring. Chu Li's large hand caressed her smooth back. He felt her jade-like body and sighed in satisfaction. Shao Qi was lying on his chest and was embarrassed. She whispered, "Are you going to kill King An?" "Yes, there'll be no peace until King An is eliminated," Chu Li replied. "Deal with it as it comes. There's no need to kill him. He's a rabid dog now." Chu Li sighed. "He's desperate to bite me and has completely lost his mind. If I don't kill him, Lu Xing won't be the only one who will die. The second lady and the public house will be in danger too. Second, eldest sister won't allow you to kill him either." "I'm fine." Chu Li hugged her tightly and let her stick to him. He felt the softness and warmth of her body. "I'm confident that I can take a blow from the emperor and escape safely." Shao Qi looked up at him. Chu Li nodded confidently. "I've taken a blow from an enlightened master before, and I know how to take it. With my god's limbs, he won't dare to chase after us if we escape to the Fu Dynasty's Peace Bridge." Shao Qi frowned and remained silent. She knew that Chu Li's god's limbs were mysterious, but she could not help but worry and did not want Chu Li to leave. After this, she felt that she had become much weaker and could not bear the pain of losing him. Just thinking about it made her heart palpitate. Chu Li patted her back and smiled. "Once King An dies, the second lady will be able to live a carefree life. She won't have to worry about anything anymore, and the public house will no longer have to worry about anything. But you—" Shao Qi frowned. Everyone else was living a good life, but he had to risk his life. It was really unfair. Chu Li said, "After killing Queen An, I might stay in the Peace Bridge for a while. You don't have to worry. I'll send a letter back." Things often did not go according to plan. He was planning for the worst in advance. Sigh. Shao Qi sighed softly. Chu Li kissed her fair forehead and smiled. "Don't worry, I'm going to become an enlightened master in the future. I won't die so easily. Besides, I have a secret skill. Even if I die, I can come back to life. So, you don't have to worry when you hear about my death." Shao Qi rolled her eyes at him. She felt a lingering fear when she thought about her resurrection. What if she did not come back to life this time? How would she live the rest of her life? Chapter 1093. Chu Li caressed her jade-like back and observed his own body thoughtfully. He realized that after merging with Shao Qi, there was a strange feeling as if he could sense Shao Qi's existence. Even if he closed his eyes, he could still feel Shao Qi beside him. It was as if he had merged with her and could feel her emotions. He did not know how this feeling was formed, but he was very happy. With this wonderful feeling, he could come to her side with just a thought. He did not need to use the all-seeing divine power anymore. Her flawless body made him intoxicated. He wished he could hold her in his arms forever and never separate from her. The land of gentleness was the grave of a hero. Even a hero had a weakness for a beauty. The ancients did not lie. Flap, flap, flap. Suddenly, the sound of wings flapping came from outside the window. Chu Li's omniscient mirror saw a snow-white bird standing outside the window. He waved his hand, and the window opened. The snow-white bird hopped in and landed on the bed. It looked at Shao Qi with its black eyes. Shao Qi stretched out her snow-white arms. The brocade quilt fell to the ground, revealing her snow-white shoulders. Her silky black hair was draped over her shoulders. The black and white contrasted with each other. The black was translucent, while the white was crystal clear. It was breathtaking. She took the small bamboo tube from the bird's feet and patted its back. The snow-white bird chirped and turned into a white light that shot out of the window and disappeared. Chu Li's omniscient mirror saw it fly straight into the sky and merge into the clouds like a stream of light. After a while, it disappeared from his observation range. It was shockingly fast. It was a few times faster than a martial arts master's light body technique. "What a clever little fella," Chu Li praised. Xiao Qi said, "This is a mutated snow sparrow. It's news from the High Duke's public house." "What happened?" Chu Li frowned. He sensed that Xiao Qi's mood was suddenly down. He did not use the omniscient mirror. It was purely telepathy. Xiao Qi looked at him and did not say a word. Chu Li smiled. "What else can I know? It's better if you don't know." Xiao Qi sighed and hugged him tightly again. Xiao Qi, who had completely turned into a woman, had a different mentality. She was no longer as indifferent as before. Chu Li patted her shoulder. "Tell me," Xiao Qi sighed. "The High Duke's public house lost 2 protectors." Chu Li frowned. "Who did this?" His tone was light, but it contained a dense killing intent. The High Duke's public house was his route, and he would not allow anyone to invade it. Killing the protectors of the High Duke's public house was no different from killing him, so he must eliminate the other party. "I don't know." Xiao Qi sighed softly. "But I think it's King and he—" Chu Li's expression turned solemn as he said coldly, he finally couldn't hold it in any longer. He had been thinking of ways to divert Prince An's attention. He asked Lu Yurong to assassinate him, so that Prince An would not have any ideas on the House of High Duke. Second eldest sister has decided to return to the imperial residence, Xiao Qi said. Chu Li said, "This is exactly what King An wants. If second eldest sister doesn't return, King An will kill the protectors of the High Duke's public house." Xiao Qi said, "Second eldest sister doesn't want to implicate the High Duke's public house. What happens after she goes back?" When Chu Li thought of this, his heart was filled with murderous intent. He wished he could kill King An right there and then, so that everything would disappear without a trace, so that Sio Shi could live a peaceful life, and so that the House of High Dukes could be at peace. "I guess second eldest sister will completely become King An's." Xiao Qi frowned. Chu Li sneered. "In the end, King An still wants to kill me." Xiao Qi said, "Isn't he lusting after second eldest sister's beauty?" "Which man isn't lustful?" Chu Li sneered. "Of course, he lusts after second lady's beauty, but there are many ways to possess second lady. He just had to use such a drastic method to provoke me. He's hoping that you'll assassinate him." Xiao Qi frowned. "Then he'll borrow the emperor's hand to kill you?" Chu Li slowly nodded. He suddenly looked towards the southwest direction and shook his head. "It's a 2-pronged attack." He even sent someone over. Xiao Qi quickly extended her hand to retrieve her clothes. Chu Li gently shook his head. "No need, leave it to me." Xiao Qi retracted her snow-white arm. Chu Li put on his clothes and disappeared in a flash. The 4 old men landed without a sound. They made a hand gesture and slowly walked toward the bedroom. Their eyebrows were all white, their eyes were bright and threatening, and their cultivation level was shockingly high. Chu Li suddenly appeared behind one of the elders and slammed his palm on his back. It was calm and precise. The elder was hit without any reaction. He did not even have time to dodge. Bang! The elder was sent flying and remained motionless after landing on the ground. The other 3 elders turned around and pounced on him. The 3 of them were shocked. They felt an invisible force wrapping around them, hindering their movements. It was as if it wanted to immobilize them, so they could not help but slow down. However, Chu Li suddenly sped up and appeared behind one of the elders like a ghost. Under the heavenly demonic field, they were bound and hindered and their cultivation level was reduced by 1 level. However, Chu Li was like a fish in water in the heavenly demonic field. His speed was faster than usual. The 4 elders had more than 200 years of cultivation, but their hands and feet were tied at this moment. Their movements were slow, and they were easily sent flying by Chu Li. The heavenly demonic energy drilled into their bodies and devoured their inner energy. Chu Li slammed his palm on them again and instantly swept away their cultivation level. The remaining heavenly demonic power killed them, and they died. The whole process happened in the blink of an eye. Chu Li faced 4 masters with 200 years of cultivation easily, as if he was dealing with an innate master. He fluttered back into the house. Xiao Qi had already put on a gown and covered her graceful body. She was tying up her hair. Was it sent by King An? Chu Li nodded. It seems like King An's power has increased greatly. He can even send 4 masters with more than 200 years of cultivation. Could it be the emperor? Xiao Qi frowned. Chu Li shook his head. The emperor won't intervene. It should be a martial arts faction. Every first-rate sect had their own grandmasters, although it was an unspoken rule that only masters who were below 100 years old would be active outside. Those who were above 100 years old would cultivate in seclusion within the mountain. However, during critical moments, these hidden masters would still appear. Grandmasters had a lifespan of 300 years. Those with more than 200 years of cultivation were already the top. They were the foundation of the faction. Since they were sent out, it was obvious that King An had made a big wish and distributed enough benefits. This also showed that King An was anxious. He was like a gambler who had lost all his money and was crazy to the point that he did not care about anything else. Will second eldest sister be in danger? Xiao Qi frowned. If such a master did not come to assassinate her, but to kidnap second eldest sister, then the masters of the public house would not be able to withstand it. If King An was only after second eldest sister's beauty, he might not wait for her to reach the imperial residence. He might even make a move halfway. Thinking about this, she was restless and anxious. Chu Li said, "Don't worry. I will know if anything happens to second lady. I'll go to second eldest sister." Xiao Qi said softly. She was really worried about Xiao Shi's protectors. Chu Li pondered for a moment and slowly nodded. "All right." Chapter 1094. But what will you do if I leave? Xiao Qi frowned and hesitated. She was worried about Xiao Shi and Chu Li too. Chu Li smiled. "I won't starve to death." "How do you usually eat?" "I'll go to a restaurant. It's fine if I eat it once or twice, but I'll get sick of it if I eat it too much." Chu Li laughed. When Xiao Qi, who was as pure as ice and as clean as jade, talked about this, he was touched. It was indescribably interesting. Xiao Qi rolled her eyes at him. "Eating is not a small matter. Can you really solve it?" "Don't worry, I'll think of a way." Chu Li smiled. Xiao Qi sighed. "Although I don't want you to kill King An, it seems like you have no choice but to do it. He's so aggressive that he wants to piss you off." Chu Li nodded slowly. King An's every move was aimed at his vital points. He was angering him and making him suffer. From King An's point of view, his martial arts had not recovered yet. Hence, he was unscrupulously attacking Chu Li to vent his anger from before. Even though he knew that he had lost his martial arts, he still sent 4 200-year-old martial arts masters. King An was becoming more cautious and wanted to be foolproof. It seemed like he had learned his lesson from his failures. He messed up his actions and enhanced his abilities. The many setbacks had made him more cunning. Chu Li suddenly frowned. Xiao Qi looked at him. Chu Li said, "There's an imperial edict from Fairy's capital." Xiao Qi was puzzled. "For you?" Most likely. Chu Li nodded slowly. Shao Qi scoffed. What is the emperor trying to do? Chu Li gritted his teeth and became even more resentful towards the emperor. The feeling of being manipulated by others was terrible. He wanted to become an enlightened master and beat the emperor until he begged for mercy. You should go to the second lady first. Chu Li frowned. Shao Qi shook her head. Let's see what the imperial edict says first. The two talked for a while before footsteps were heard from outside. Two middle-aged men in black clothes pushed the door open and strode in. Chief Chu Li of King An's imperial residence. Receive the edict. Chu Li went forward and fist saluted. Chu Li received the edict. The two imperial house protectors in black robes looked valiant and had an intimidating aura. Their eyes were as bright as lightning as they said, Chu Li is to return to King An's imperial residence immediately and resume his duties as an envoy of the imperial residence. We hope that he will be loyal to his duty and not neglect his duties. Chu Li gave a fist salute. Thank you, Your Majesty. The two black-clothed guards from the imperial house smiled. Chief Chu, you are favored by the emperor. Congratulations. An imperial edict was sent to the imperial mausoleum, and then another one was immediately sent to summon him back. With such a change, it was clear that the emperor cared for him and always remembered him. Chu Li gestured for them to enter the gazebo and take a seat. Shao Qi then served them tea. The two of them looked at Shao Qi, but were not surprised by her beauty. They had seen many beauties in the imperial house, but they were curious about her identity. They knew that she was the third lady of the High Duke's public house, Shao Qi, so they wanted to take a closer look at her appearance. The news of Xiao Qi marrying Chu Li had spread like wildfire in Fairy's capital. Everyone knew about it. Chu Li's status was too low, yet he married the lady. It was truly shocking. On the other hand, Xiao Qi married Chu Li when he was in dire straits. It was truly admirable. Chu Li took a sip and put down the teacup. My martial arts have been crippled. I'm a useless person now. Why did the emperor ask me to return? His Highness King and personally went to the imperial house to plead for you. A middle-aged imperial house protector shook his head and smiled. The emperor didn't agree at first. After all, you've only been here for a short time. How could the emperor change his mind so quickly? However, he couldn't resist His Highness King An's pleading, so he agreed. Chu Li smiled. If that's the case, I should thank His Highness King An. It seems like His Highness King An relies heavily on you, Chief Chu. As soon as he returned to the imperial residence, he immediately begged the emperor to transfer you back. The other middle-aged imperial house protector looked envious. I'm so envious to be able to work for a royal highness who values you so much. Chu Li chuckled. I'm flattered by His Highness King An's kindness. King An wanted him to return and torture him. He wanted to settle old and new grudges at the same time. Outsiders might not be able to see the mystery behind it, but those who could would not say anything. Protectors, do you want to travel together? Chu Li asked. The two imperial house protectors nodded and smiled. Yes, the emperor pitied you for having your martial arts crippled. He's worried that it won't be safe on the journey, so he asked us to escort you. You just have to rush back to Fairy's capital in a month. There's no need to rush. Chu Li's heart skipped a beat as he sensed something in his mind. It was Xiao Shi who had crushed her jade pendant and wanted him to hurry over. He was anxious, but his expression did not change. He smiled. I see. Thank you, Your Highness. How about this? We'll go our separate ways. You two go ahead. I have my own guards. That won't do, Chief Chu. The two imperial house protectors shook their heads. We're under His Majesty's orders to protect you. The two Imperial House protectors shook their heads. One of the Imperial House protectors said, "Although our martial arts aren't that strong, our identities can be used." They were the Imperial House protectors who carried out the orders of the Emperor. They represented the Imperial House's prestige. If anyone dared to offend them, it would be equivalent to disrespecting the Imperial House, and they would not be able to live. Chu Li was anxious. He did not want to be entangled with them. He stood up and said, "Xiao Qi, talk to them. I'll go buy some food and wine." He did not wait for the two Imperial House protectors to reply. He rushed out of the residence and left in a hurry. He suddenly disappeared. The bright sunlight shone on a sparse forest. It was late autumn, and the leaves had withered. There was an open space deep in the forest. Xiao Shi was lying motionlessly on the thick, soft grass. She was dressed in a white gown, and her face was covered by a white veil. Her phoenix eyes were cold as she stared at King An, who was standing with his hands behind his back. King An was dressed in a bright yellow gown. He looked as handsome as jade. His eyes were like cold stars as he smiled at Xiao Shi. There were only the two of them. It was quiet all around. "What do you want?" Xiao Shi asked coldly. King An chuckled. His handsome face revealed a proud smile. "What do you think, my princess?" Xiao Shi said, "You have the face of a despicable person who becomes arrogant after achieving his goals." Arrogant after achieving his goals. Well said. Ha ha. King An laughed. "Princess, you have been married to me for so long. When have you ever fulfilled your duties as a princess? Today, I will get what I want." Xiao Shi frowned. "Are you crazy? Ha ha. I originally wanted to be intimate with you in front of Chu Li. I wanted to anger him to death. But princess, you are so beautiful. I can't help it." King An looked at her strangely. Xiao Shi was pushed to the ground. She laid on the thick, soft grass. Her back and buttocks revealed their amazing curves. It made King An's eyes burn with passion. Seeing his gaze, Xiao Shi said disapprovingly, "In front of Chu Li, do you have the guts?" "Humph, he is now a cripple. Why wouldn't I dare?" King An sneered. "I have already pleaded with my father to summon him back. He will continue to be the chief of the imperial residence." Interesting, right? It is. You have guts. Xiao Shi said coldly. King An said, "Today, princess, I will let you see if I have guts." As he said that, he got closer to Xiao Shi. He gently took off Xiao Shi's white veil and revealed her beautiful face. Xiao Shi's acupuncture point was sealed. She could not move. She could only let him take off her white veil and stare at her greedily. Chapter 10, 95. Xiao Shi furrowed her brows and looked at him coldly. Her gaze was magnanimous and sarcastic. As a royal highness, you have to rely on such methods to get a woman. What a joke! How pitiful! How pitiful! Prince An's expression changed slightly. His burning gaze turned cold. He felt that the sarcastic smile on her beautiful face was particularly glaring. He could not help but feel angry. Slap! He swung his palm. Xiao Shi flew out and flicked a few times in the air. Bang! She landed heavily on the thick and soft grass with her back facing the sky. Prince An laughed out loud and appeared in front of her in a flash. He squatted down and looked at her with a smile. "Sigh, I've sinned. If Chu Li saw this, he would be heartbroken." Xiao Shi said lightly, "You're dealing with me just to anger Chu Li?" "That's right." Prince An smiled. "He didn't let me be happy. I'll return it tenfold. I know that dealing with you is more painful than dealing with him. If Chu Li saw you like this, he would be heartbroken." Xiao Shi's beautiful face had a red handprint. It was clearly visible. Prince An slap was very skillful. Anyone who saw the clear handprint could feel how painful it was. Seoshur said, "Aren't you afraid that Chuli will come after you? He's useless now. Why would I be afraid of him?" Princeton sneered. Seoshur shook her head. "You're still afraid of him. If not, why would you ask the emperor to summon him back?" "Humph, to summon him back is to torture him," Princeton said coldly, "especially when he sees you suffer. He'll be in even more pain. He'll want to commit suicide. It'll be so satisfying." Seoshur said, "You're afraid that he'll recover his martial arts. That's why you're keeping him under your watch. In the end, you're still afraid of him." "Heh," Princeton sneered and shook his head. "Princess, you're very smart. Unfortunately, smart people don't live long." Seoshur said lightly, "Do you still dare to kill me?" "I've changed my mind, Princess." Princeton's sneer turned into a smile. He looked her up and down. His eyes lingered on her proudly bulging breasts. His gaze became passionate and greedy once again. "Let's first consummate our marriage, then kill you. Don't you think Chu Li would go crazy? He will definitely hate himself. Wang Fei, you died because of him. If it wasn't for him, Wang Fei would not have died. If it wasn't for him, I would have died a long time ago," Seoshur said lightly. "If he hadn't offended me, I wouldn't have killed you." Princeton smiled and said, "I will tell him that it was I who killed you, Princess. He will hate himself for being powerless and suffering in pain every day." "Haha, this is great. This feels great." "You really are despicable," Seoshur said faintly, "but he will still cripple you in the end." "Humph, the current me is not the previous me." Princeton shook his head and smiled. "It's not him who crippled me now. It's me who crippled him. When he arrives at the imperial residence, I'll cripple him every few days so that he'll never be able to turn over a new leaf. I'll make him live in pain for the rest of his life." As he spoke, he slowly reached out his large hand and was about to touch her ample breasts. Seoshur stared at him without flinching. Prince N's hand slowly approached, and was about to touch it. Bam! Prince N suddenly flew out and crashed into a peach tree beside him. The peach tree immediately shed its leaves. He slowly slid down from the tree and onto the ground. His entire body could not move. A violent force was ravaging and devouring his body, trying to devour all of his cultivation. His internal organs were all severely injured. Wah! He spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Chu Li in shock. Chu Li appeared at his previous position and lightly patted Seoshur's body twice. He unsealed her acupuncture point and said softly, "Second lady, are you all right?" Seoshur shook her head. Chu Li said apologetically, "I'm late." Seoshur said, "You're not late." Chu Li gently touched her face. A warm breath wandered around her cheeks. After a while, he let go of his hand. Seoshur's face was no longer red and swollen. She was no longer in pain. "Be careful!" Seoshur suddenly shouted. Prince N swung his hand and shot out a bolt of lightning towards Chu Li's back. Chu Li bent his finger and flicked it behind him. Ding! With a clear sound, a flying dagger fell to the ground. Chu Li could not help but laugh. Prince N was playing with flying blades in front of him. Prince N threw the flying blade. He did not care if it hit its target or not. He flipped and darted into the depths of the forest. Chu Li suddenly appeared in front of Prince and hit his chest with his palm. Bam! Prince N flew out again and crashed into a tree. He slid down and spat out another mouthful of blood. Chu Li went forward and grabbed his collar. In a flash, he appeared in front of Seoshur. Prince An's expression did not change. He said in a low voice, "Isn't your martial arts crippled?" Chu Li scoffed coldly. "Can't my martial arts recover? If your Royal Highness can recover, why can't I?" As he spoke, He waved his hand and slapped Prince N. Following that, he slapped him a few more times. It was clean and crisp. Prince N's handsome face quickly turned red and swollen. Chu Li slapped him a dozen more times until Prince N's face was swollen. He then stopped and turned to look at Xiao Shi. "Lady, what do you think?" Xiao Shi frowned and looked at Prince and cripple his martial arts. Prince N was shocked. He was anxious. A woman's heart was the most vicious. What a vicious woman. There's no rush. Chu Li shook his head. Prince N sighed in relief. He could not understand. His martial arts had improved tremendously. He should be able to easily crush Chu Li. Moreover, Chu Li was crippled of his martial arts. Why did this happen? Why was he suppressed by Chu Li again? Chu Li's martial arts had improved to a terrifying level. Even if he was better than before, he was still no match for him. His confidence was completely crushed by these few slaps. All that was left was endless anger and murderous intent. This Chu Li was his nemesis. He was born to go against him. If he did not kill him, it would be better to die than to live. Chu Li violently threw him away. "Get lost!" King N flew far away as if he was riding on a cloud, and finally landed on a tree fork. The tree fork was light and thin, and it slowly bent downwards. He was shocked, but his internal organs were injured, and his inner energy could not be channeled properly. Bam! He finally fell to the ground with a dull thud. His internal organs seemed to tumble again. He spat out another mouthful of blood. This time, he felt more relaxed. He turned around and left. He was afraid that Chu Li would change his mind and cripple his martial arts again. He endured the pain and ran away. Xiao Shi was puzzled. "Why did you let him go?" Chu Li said, "There's no rush." "You want to kill him?" Xiao Shi frowned. She was smart. Logically speaking, Chu Li should be torturing Prince and crippling his martial arts. He might even cripple his arms or legs. Letting him go so easily was not Chu Li's style. The only explanation was that he was determined to kill Prince, and Chu Li nodded lightly. Xiao Shi said, "If you want to kill him just now. What are you hesitating for? It's not the right time yet." Chu Li shook his head. If he killed Prince, and now, the emperor would arrive in an instant. Xiao Shi would be dragged into this. This was something he would never allow and had been avoiding. Chapter 1096. Xiao Shi stood up and stretched her body. Chu Li said, "Follow me back first. I still need to go to Fairy's capital with everyone." Xiao Shi shook her head. Chu Li frowned. He used the omniscient mirror to observe and noticed Su Ru and a few protectors. Su Ru and the protectors in the residence were slightly injured, but they were fine. It was obvious that King N's light body technique was superb. He snatched her over and did not fight too much with Su Ru and the others. Let them go by themselves. Chu Li scoffed. "Forget it." Xiao Shi shook her head. "You can't even protect yourself over there, right?" She understood King N's tactics. Once he made a move, he would definitely make a move at the same time. He wanted to crush Chu Li with an overwhelming force. He would not do it bit by bit. King N wanted to destroy Chu Li in one go. Moreover, King N had said that the emperor had ordered Chu Li to return to Fairy's capital. The protector must have arrived at adjacent town. Chu Li said, "Shao Qi will be worried if you don't go." "Oh." Xiao Shi smiled. Chu Li smiled. "You two can accompany each other." "All right." Xiao Shi nodded. "How is she now?" "Not bad," Chu Li said. Xiao Shi said, "All right, let's go." Chu Li disappeared with her and appeared next to Su Ru. He asked Su Ru to go out and give her some instructions before bringing her back to adjacent town. He brought them to his residence. The two imperial house protectors looked at them in surprise. Seo Shur and Su Ru's faces were covered with white veils, so they could not see their faces clearly. However, judging from their graceful figures and temperament, they knew that they were rare beauties. The two imperial house protectors stared at them. Second eldest sister? Xiaoqi was surprised. What a coincidence. Second lady, and the others are here to visit. Chu Li smiled. Xiaoqi looked at Chu Li. She knew that he would not go out for no reason. It was obvious that second eldest sister and the others were in danger and had just been rescued. Have some tea first. I have something to talk to second eldest sister about. Xiaoqi brought Seo Shur and Su Ru into the house and closed the door. Chu Li took a sip of tea and smiled at the two imperial house protectors. It's not that I don't want you two to come along. I'm just a little worried, and I'm not sure if I should say it. Chief Chu, please speak your mind. I have too many enemies. Once I leave adjacent town and return to Fairy's capital, those people won't just stand by and watch. Too many people don't want me to return to Fairy's capital. Chu Li muttered. The two imperial house guards frowned and nodded slowly. Of course, they knew that Chu Li was in the limelight and that he was cruel and merciless. They did not know how many martial arts masters he had offended. If it were not for his outstanding martial arts, he would have died many times over. Now that he had lost his martial arts, no one would let go of this opportunity. They must seize the opportunity to kill him. Forget about the other forces. Just the Holy Church of Light alone would definitely think of ways to kill him. Moreover, there were also some enemies of the High Duke's public house. The people he had provoked were all masters. Chu Li said, "It's too dangerous for you to follow me. I'm afraid that both of you will be implicated. If you lose your life, I really don't know how to explain it to the Emperor. So for the sake of both of us, it's better for us to separate. But we have to protect you, Chief Chu." Hee. Chu Li laughed and shook his head. To be honest, although both of your martial arts are strong, you're still lacking compared to my enemies. Moreover, those people are lawless. They don't care about the dignity of the imperial family. They don't care about the Holy Church of Light. The two imperial house guards frowned. The disciples of the Holy Church of Light were famous for being reckless. Not to mention them, they would even kill the royal highnesses and crown princes. Indeed, the two of them were not enough to kill them. It was better for them to stay far away. However, when they thought about the Emperor's orders, they dared not disobey. Chu Li said, "Let's do this. Didn't the Emperor want me to arrive in 30 days? Let's meet up in Qingyun town and enter Fairy's capital on the last day." Will that work? The two imperial house guards hesitated. Chu Li smiled. "I'm somewhat confident that my protectors can protect me, but with the two of you, so if we work together, we'll have two benefits. If you and I don't say anything, how will the Emperor know if you're following us? Even if the Emperor asks, we can just say that we encountered an assassination and got separated." "All right then. Thank you, Chief Chu." The two fists saluted. Chu Li fist saluted and smiled. "It's convenient for others and convenient for ourselves. Everyone take care of each other." Yes. The two were grateful and fist saluted before they left. Chu Li sent them to the entrance of the residence and returned to the main hall. The three women were talking together when Seo Shur mentioned King En's evil deeds. Seo Qi was so angry that her face tensed up and her hand would occasionally touch the hilt of her sword. Chu Li sat on the bed and channeled to consolidate his cultivation. He had benefited a lot from the trip to the inner mausoleum. His cultivation level had deepened by 2 levels, and was more than enough to deal with a 300-year-old master. He could be said to be proud of anyone below the enlightened master. Although he was not invincible, there were few who could match him. However, compared to his cultivation level, he had gained a lot more in terms of his soul. His soul was strengthened, his spirit was clear, and he could channel his inner energy faster. Moreover, the strengthening of the 4 meridians also strengthened his body. With just his body and without inner energy, he was outstanding among the grandmasters. The biggest gain was the heavenly demonic power, which improved by leaps and bounds on the last level. If he could perfect the heavenly demonic power, he could become an enlightened master. Unfortunately, he did not dare to cultivate further, or else he would ascend to heaven. What he wanted to do was to go against heaven and become an enlightened master. He wanted to perfect the spirit beast technique. After going through the ordeal with Co Chi, he inexplicably had a deeper understanding of the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture, and Co Chi's cultivation level improved. Initially, Co Chi could not lose her virginity because of the regal sword scripture, but he could not care less at that time. Moreover, he had the miracle cure pill. He did not expect to suddenly understand the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture when he was in the ultimate state. The regal sword scripture's cultivation level originally flowed to his body, but it was reversed by the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture and returned to Co Chi's body. After being filtered by Chu Li's body, it became purer, and her cultivation level was much higher than before. The earth matrix and reincarnation scripture's mysteriousness was far beyond imagination, but it required opportunity to understand it. It was not something that could be understood just by thinking about it. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Chu Li raised his voice. Come in. Co Chi and Co Sure entered his bedroom one after another. They took a garden stool and sat in front of his bed. Under the light, the 2 women looked like they were carved from white jade. They were crystal clear and glowed. Chu Li, since your martial art is better than King An's, there's no need for you to risk your life against him. You don't have to kill him. It's fine as long as you can suppress him so that he won't dare to act recklessly. Co Sure said she previously thought that King An's martial art had improved greatly and that he was confident of winning, which was why he dared to act recklessly. Now that Chu Li's martial art had improved as well, and he had suppressed King An would have to behave himself when he returned. Co Chi nodded. Chu Li said, I'll kill King An no matter what. Second lady, you don't have to say anything. Why? Co Sure frowned. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Chapter 1097. I just heard that you and little sister have really become husband and wife. Xiao Sure furrowed her brows and glared at him in dissatisfaction. Don't tell me you want her to become a widow as soon as she gets married. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. I'm confident that I won't die. Stop boasting. Co Sure pouted her red lips. In today's world, who dares to say that they can escape the pursuit of an enlightened master? I've put in so much effort to prepare so that I can fight for a chance of survival. Chu Li nodded confidently. I've been attacked by an enlightened master before, so I know how to defend myself. Don't worry, I'm also someone who cherishes my life, and I can't bear to lose her. You're a bastard. Xiao Sure scoffed. How dare you make little sis so worried? Chu Li glanced at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi stared at him. Chu Li sighed. We'll have to kill King An sooner or later. We'll kill King An when the emperor doesn't suspect anything. That way, we won't be able to get rid of him in the future, which will bring us endless trouble. When the time comes for us to go against the emperor, who knows how many people will die? Xiao Sure frowned and remained silent. She knew that what Chu Li said made sense, but no one could predict what would happen in the future. For all she knew, Kingen might not even need Chu Li to kill him. He might even harm himself. Judging from his current state, there must be something wrong with him. He was like a balloon that could burst at any time. Chu Li could tell what she was thinking and said, "I won't pin my hopes on others. If I can solve it myself, then I will." Ah. Xiao sure sighed and shook her head helplessly at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi asked, "When are you going to make your move?" "We'll make our move tomorrow," Chu Li said. "All of you should return to the public house first." "All right," Xiao Qi said. The night was hazy. Kingen sat in his study room, his face as gloomy as water. The study room was brightly lit, but it was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Zheng Lide's voice could be heard from outside. "Your Highness, 2 guards from the Imperial House are here to see you. Invite him in quickly." Kingen stood up abruptly. Zheng Lide said, "Yes." Princeton stood up to welcome him. 2 elders with white eyebrows and beards, one fat and one skinny, had already entered. They closed-fist saluted. "Greetings, Your Royal Highness." "Seniors, you don't have to be so polite," Kingen hurriedly said. The 2 of them cupped their fists casually. Princeton extended his hand in invitation. The fat old man chuckled and said, "We have come under the Emperor's orders to serve as Your Highness' personal guards." "Thank you, seniors." Prince Anne's smile was so warm that it was like a spring breeze. "I'll leave my safety in your hands. Don't worry, Your Highness." The thin old man replied in a muffled voice. The fat old man smiled and said, "Does His Highness have an enemy, so he called us over?" They were the internal guards of the Imperial House, the top-notch experts that almost never left the Imperial House. With more than 300 years of cultivation, they rarely had a worthy opponent below the enlightened master level. They were originally inner mausoleum protectors and were free and unfettered in the Imperial House. The Emperor was an enlightened master. They only had to protect the Empress and the concubines. Those powerhouses who had broken into the Imperial House to assassinate the Emperor would not bother to assassinate the Empress and the Imperial concubines. Coming to King Anne's imperial residence was considered a tough job, as it disturbed their cultivation. However, they couldn't refuse the Emperor's orders. Princeton forced a smile. "I'm not really an enemy. I just feel uneasy, so I asked the 2 seniors to come over to calm me down and suppress my evil aura." He didn't want to say that Chu Li was his enemy. Otherwise, his incompetence would spread all over the world, and he would no longer have a chance to fight for the throne. "Don't worry, Your Highness. We'll protect you from the side." The fat old man smiled. "Thank you, seniors." Princeton solemnly closed fist saluted. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief, and his mind finally calmed down. Ever since he met Chu Li, he had been deeply worried. He could feel Chu Li's killing intent. Chu Li could have crippled his martial arts, but he didn't do it. Such an unusual action showed that he really wanted to kill him. As a prince, if Princeton wanted to kill him, he would have to bear the wrath of the Emperor. However, it seemed like Chu Li planned to die together with him and drag him to hell with him. With this worry, he asked the Emperor for help and hired 2 internal guards of the Imperial House as protectors. The Emperor readily agreed to this request. Because the internal guards of the Imperial House were only loyal to the Emperor, they would report every move of the prince they were protecting. Therefore, the princes rarely hired the internal guards of the Imperial House. If Princeton wasn't worried, he wouldn't have hired these 2 guards. With these 2 guards, he could finally have a good night's sleep. He returned to his bedroom and just fell asleep when he suddenly felt something strange. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he wasn't in his bedroom, but on top of a mountain. A bright moon hung in the sky, its moonlight like water. A handsome young man stood in front of him, smiling at him. "You—" Princeton opened his mouth. With a flash of a blade, his vision went black. His head flew up, and blood spurted out like a pillar. Chu transformed into dew foam and appeared in Prince An's imperial residence. Because Princeton had a rare treasure that could suppress divine powers, he couldn't use the all-seeing divine technique or God's limbs. His Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture could break through the suppression of these rare treasures, but it could only break through the suppression of the rare treasures around him. It couldn't break through the other side that was far away. After he appeared in Prince An's imperial residence, the rare treasures around Prince An lost their effects, and he could freely use divine powers. He instantly appeared next to Prince An and pulled him away. When he appeared on top of a towering mountain in the Li dynasty, he beheaded Prince An. The two imperial house internal guards couldn't react in time. They didn't expect divine powers to appear under the suppression of a rare treasure. By the time they reacted, Prince An was already gone. After Chu Li beheaded him, he activated God's limbs and was about to leave. Damn it! An angry roar seemed to come from the distant void, like rolling thunder. It sounded far away at first, but in an instant it resounded in the world. A vast and boundless energy descended from the sky and froze him. The space around him was locked, and he couldn't move at all. Chu Li activated his heavenly demonic power to its maximum and activated the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. A figure suddenly appeared in front of him, and a hand was already on his chest. It was too fast for him to react. Bang! The heavenly demonic orb instantly appeared in front of Chu Li's chest to devour the palm energy. At the same time, he struck his opponent's chest with his palm. He had used the enlightened master's energy that had been devoured by the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. Bang! Both of them flew backward at the same time. He flew straight out of the mountain and flew in the air before he landed in the dense evergreen pine forest. His vision darkened as if he was about to disappear from the world and turn into ashes. From the corner of his eye, he noticed that the emperor had been sent flying as well. The Buddha and the heavenly demon in the void of his mind chanted with all their might. The halo at the back of the Buddha's head shone brightly. The Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture moved at an unprecedented speed to resist this destructive will. With the help of the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, the force that bound him loosened. He disappeared in a flash and appeared in the Fu dynasty's Jian An. When he suddenly appeared in a small courtyard in Jian An, he immediately lay prone in the courtyard and vomited blood. Not only did he vomit blood, but he also vomited chunks of flesh. His internal organs were all shattered. The heavenly demonic orb failed to devour the enlightened master's energy. Instead, it was crushed by the enlightened master's energy, and his internal organs were shattered as well. Chapter 1098. P.S. Update complete. He was very familiar with this feeling as he had experienced it too many times in the inner mausoleum. This was the power of an enlightened master. Obviously, an enlightened master was approaching. The omniscient mirror could observe 100 miles away. He clearly saw the emperor and an elder with white eyebrows and beard exchanging blows in the sky. Both of them retreated and floated into the air before disappearing. This blow did not contain any earth-shattering power. In fact, there was no overflow of power at all. It was as if two people who did not know martial arts had exchanged blows. The suffocating power from before had disappeared. It was as if nothing had happened, and the scene earlier was like an illusion to him. He let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, The Fu dynasty's emperor reacted quickly and was resolute. Otherwise, if he had been one step slower and the emperor had attacked him again, he would have been dead for sure. He would have been smashed into pieces and could not be revived by the life and death scripture. He disappeared on the spot in a flash and appeared in another house. He did not want to be targeted by the emperor or the Fu dynasty's emperor. In their eyes, he was just an ant that could be trampled to death at any time. This feeling made him angry, and it was also one of the motivations for him to become an enlightened master. He continued to vomit blood in the pagoda of this residence, which was mixed with pieces of flesh. His heart palpitated as he vomited blood. The scene earlier was too dangerous, and he almost did not make it back. If it were not for the enlightened master's energy devoured by the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique, his palm would not have hit the emperor at all. Even if it had hit him, it would only have tickled him and would not have been able to break the emperor's seal of space. He would have died without a doubt. The power of an enlightened master was truly terrifying. Activating the life and death scripture, spiritual chi surged from all directions, healing his heavy injuries. Even though he was on the brink of death, he still had a breath left to hold on. He took out a jade bottle from his bosom and poured all the medicinal pills in the bottle into his mouth. The spiritual energy around him surged, and in addition to the spiritual energy from the spirit pills circulating around his internal organs, it continuously healed them. No matter how serious his injuries were, he could still withstand it. However, the enlightened master's energy was like a knife. It was extremely solid and sharp, constantly cutting his internal organs. Its destructive power far surpassed the healing of the spiritual energy and spirit pills. His body was rapidly deteriorating. Initially, he wanted to use the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique to devour the enlightened master's energy. Unfortunately, the heavenly demonic orb had been shattered by the enlightened master's energy, so he could not activate the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. He could only watch as the enlightened master's energy wreaked havoc. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture tried its best to transform the enlightened master's energy. It had just reversed the flow of energy, turning death into life, turning destruction into restoration, but it immediately reverted back to normal. The enlightened master's energy seemed to have its own consciousness. It was a pure will. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture could transform it for a while, but it could not transform it forever. Chuli smiled bitterly. This was the power of an enlightened master's attack. He would not be able to survive if he took it head-on. He could only watch helplessly as his body deteriorated towards death. At this rate, he would die in less than 15 minutes. His mind spun rapidly. He was unwilling to resign himself to death like this. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. He reversed the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. He ignored the Empyrean deity's energy and focused on his body. The reverse circulation of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture did not heal his body. Instead, it destroyed his body along with the enlightened master's energy. The rate at which his body deteriorated increased abruptly. Within 10 minutes, his life was in danger. He began to circulate the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture in reverse. A strange life force appeared and rapidly healed his organs. He felt invigorated. Unfortunately, the enlightened master's energy was still there and continued to destroy his organs. He ignored the enlightened master's energy and continued to circulate the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. As the life force continued to surge, a heavenly demonic orb that was smaller than a speck of dust suddenly appeared above his precordium. It quickly spread to his entire body, and the heavenly demonic field reappeared. He was overjoyed. He began to circulate the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique and started to devour the enlightened master's energy. The enlightened master's energy was devoured bit by the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. The damage to his organs gradually weakened. The spiritual energy in the surroundings and the spirit pill desperately healed his organs, gradually maintaining a situation that was neither too good nor too bad. As the enlightened master's energy weakened, the spiritual energy gradually gained the upper hand. In the end, the enlightened master's energy was completely devoured, and the spiritual energy continuously healed his organs. He let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally saved his life. The next morning, he was completely healed. He did not seem to be injured at all. It did not seem like he was the one who was in danger yesterday. The difference between the 2 days was like heaven and earth. He sat in the courtyard with a frown and buried the blood in the courtyard. He furrowed his brows as he racked his brains. After he had fully recovered, he observed himself and noticed a faintly discernible aura lingering in the void of his mind like a gust of wind in the night sky. If his soul was not shockingly strong, it would have been difficult for him to notice this aura. No matter how he thought about it, this aura was left behind by the enlightened master's energy. It was the emperor's mark. As soon as he left the Fu dynasty, the emperor would definitely be able to find him using this mark. No matter how he changed into, the emperor would find him and kill him. If his soul was not strong enough to notice this aura, he would have been dead by now. He thought of many ways. He used the omniscient mirror to suppress it, and the Buddha and the heavenly demon to capture it, but none of them could do anything about this aura. It was like wind, fog, and smoke. It was elusive and impossible to capture. In the end, he had no choice but to use his last resort. He transformed into Zhou and went to heavenly demonic sect. He glided to heavenly demonic sect and went straight to the basilica. He raised his voice and said, "Disciple Zhou greets Honorable Masterly. Zhou." A deep voice came from inside. Chu Li pushed the door open and entered the basilica. He gave a fist salute and said, "Greetings, Honorable Masterly. You actually left Illwind Valley?" Elderly looked at him with a serious expression. He knew what kind of place Illwind Valley was. It was a place with a slim chance of survival. It was surprising that Zhou was able to leave. "Yes," Chu Li replied. Elderly asked, "Since you've left Illwind Valley, why did you come back?" Chu Li said, "I want to meet the 4 honorable masters." "Humph," Elderly said impatiently. "You're here to provoke us on purpose, aren't you? Be **starred. Chu Li smiled and said nothing. Elderly looked at him and frowned. "You've cultivated the heavenly demonic power to the 9th level." "Yes," Chu Li nodded. "There's nothing to be happy about with such a cultivation method." Elderly scoffed. "Do you still want to stay in heavenly demonic sect?" "Of course." Chu Li said, "The sect leader once said that as long as I leave Illwind Valley, everything will be written off, and I'll still be a disciple of heavenly demonic sect." "If that's the case, you should go back and rest," Elderly said. Chu Li responded and suddenly took a step back. It was as if he had accidentally bumped into the heavenly demon statue. Bam! He was sent flying backward and immediately fell unconscious. Elderly was stunned. He quickly called for someone to help Chu Li back to his house. When Chu Li slowly woke up, he realized that the sky was bright outside. He looked at the shadow on the window and knew that it was noon. He had a splitting headache and could not use the omniscient mirror. The void of his mind was heavily damaged again. He had used a method that would cause both sides to suffer. He did not know if this heavy injury would erase the emperor's imprint. If it could not be erased, then he could only challenge an enlightened master and use that enlightened master to deal with the emperor's imprint. There might be a glimmer of hope. Otherwise, he could not return to the Ji dynasty and could only stay here. Chapter 10, 99. Footsteps were heard as Fu Qingya walked in slowly and looked at him. Chu Li sat on the bed and gave a fist salute. Sect leader. Fu Qingya sized him up and shook his head. I didn't expect you to be able to reach this state. This is definitely not a state that the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique can achieve. Did you have a fortuitous encounter? Yes. Chu Li nodded. I exchanged blows with an enlightened master. An enlightened master. Fu Qingya frowned at him. What's going on? Chu Li shook his head. I transformed into another person and entered the Ji dynasty's imperial mausoleum's inner mausoleum. I absorbed the enlightened master's energy and reached this state. How dare you? Fu Qingya said in a deep voice. He sighed to himself. Zhao Ying has really gone mad. He's willing to do anything in order to improve his strength. He treats his own life like child's play. He's ruthless to others, but even more ruthless to himself. How terrifying. Only such a state of qi deviation could allow him to reach such a realm in such a short period of time. The inner mausoleum of the Imperial Mausoleum was the most heavily guarded place in the world. Everyone who could enter the inner mausoleum was the most reliable person. There would not be any problems, and even if there were problems, it would be difficult for them to escape with their lives. The fact that Zhao Ying was able to use the heavenly demonic power to enter the inner mausoleum was considered an extremely impressive feat among the heavenly demonic sect's disciples in the past generations. If word of this got out, it would be enough to spread his name all over the world and make people even more fearful of the heavenly demonic sect. The heavenly demonic sect's disciples could really be everywhere. Chu Li said, I realized that even if I reached this state, it's impossible to perfect it. Maybe the heavenly demon statue has the answer. So I came back to take a look. The heavenly demon statue absolutely cannot be touched. It is an object used to restrain the heavenly gods. Fu Qingya shook his head and said, with your cultivation level, you're no different from an ant in front of a heavenly demon god. How dare you set your sights on it? You're courting death. Yes, Chu Li smiled bitterly and helplessly. Now you know how powerful I am. My head is splitting. Sect leader, do you have the heavenly demonic stone? I'll get someone to send it over later. Fu Qingya frowned and said, the heavenly demonic stone sect is getting rarer. Use it carefully and don't lose it. Yes. Chu Li smiled. Fu Qingya muttered, Zhao Ying, are you angry that the disciples of heavenly demonic sect can't walk openly in the world? Chu Li was stunned. He slowly nodded and smiled. It's also related to our heavenly demonic power. The world is still too afraid of our heavenly demonic power. It's ever-changing and impossible to guard against. Everyone will be on guard against it. The heavenly demonic power isn't the key. Fu Qingya shook his head. The key is that heavenly demonic sect has yet to produce an enlightened master. Chu Li asked, the founder wasn't an enlightened master. Fu Qingya shook his head slowly. Chu Li asked, sect leader wants to become an enlightened master? Of course, Fu Qingya answered. Chu Li shook his head. Since the founder of the sect couldn't achieve it, I'm afraid there's something wrong with the heavenly demonic power itself. I think so too. Fu Qingya frowned and said, our realms are about the same now. You'll use your cultivation technique, while I'll use mine. Let's see if we can perfect it and become an enlightened master. Chu Li said, sect leader, as far as I know, The best way to become an enlightened master is to cultivate the spirit beast heart technique. Humph, that's even more difficult. Fu Qingya sneered. It's only a legend. Which spirit beast heart technique should I cultivate to become an enlightened master? Chu Li asked. Fu Qingya glanced at him and asked, why? Do you want to cultivate the spirit beast heart technique? Chu Li nodded. If I know which heart technique, I'll secretly learn it. It'll be easier for me to become an enlightened master than the heavenly demonic power. There's no harm in telling you, Fu Qingya said. To become an enlightened master, you'll need 4 spirit beast heart techniques: the azure dragon, white tiger, black tortoise, and vermilion bird. As long as you fit these 4 heart techniques, you'll be able to become an enlightened master. Azure dragon, white tiger. Chu Li frowned. Which sex heart technique is this? Fu Qingya explained. The azure dragon heart technique is the dragon taming technique of Goddess Attraction Mountain. As for the other 3 heart techniques, it doesn't have to be any one of them. It'll be fine as long as the element is similar. The black tortoise has the earth element, the white tiger has the metal element, and the vermilion bird has the fire element. It'll be fine as long as the spirit beast heart technique matches these. Chu Li nodded. Fu Qingya scoffed. These spirit beast heart techniques require a complete inheritance. There won't be any mistakes if you cultivate them to perfection. Not every sect has them, so it'll be very difficult to obtain them. Chu Li smiled. Will it be difficult for heavenly demonic sect's disciples? Humph, don't think that you're omnipotent just because you have the heavenly demonic power. Just don't get yourself into big trouble, Fu Qingya said coldly. Chu Li replied, Don't worry, sect leader. At this moment, his expression changed drastically. Bang! The entire ground shook, as if there was an earthquake. Fu Qingya's expression changed. He disappeared in a flash and reappeared in front of the heavenly demon statue. Then he shouted, Activate the heavenly demon statue. Yes, Elder Bai and the other 3 elders responded. The 5 of them placed their hands on the statue's limbs and the heavenly demon statue's forehead. Chu Li used the heavenly demonic power to appear in the basilica. Unfortunately, he still could not use the omniscient mirror, so he could only see that the heavenly demon statue's eyes were sparkling as if it had come to life. Then, the statue's head began to turn as if it was looking at the sky through the basilica. 2 white beams of light suddenly shot out of its eyes. They were flawless and extremely pure beams of light. 2 holes silently appeared at the top of the basilica. There was no movement at all, as if the holes had been melted by the white light. Bang! An explosion was heard in the sky, followed by a furious roar. Heavenly demonic sect. Chu Li smiled when he heard that it was the Ji dynasty's emperor Lung Wufeng's voice. It seemed like his trick of diverting the trouble had worked. With that, he had finally gotten rid of Snow Lunar Pavilion's trouble, and the Ji dynasty's emperor had his eyes on heavenly demonic sect. The enlightened master's mighty aura surged like waves. The entire heavenly demonic sect felt like it had fallen into a raging sea. An invisible force was pressing down on every disciple as if it was trying to crush them. Fu Qingya and the other 4 elders' faces darkened as white steam rose from the top of their heads. The heavenly demon statue turned its head again to look at the sky. 2 more white beams of light shot out of its eyes. Wherever the white light passed, everything that was blocking it disappeared without a trace. Bang! An explosion was heard from afar. The monstrous enlightened master's mighty aura suddenly faded and disappeared without a trace. Chu Li let out a long sigh of relief. It seemed like Lung Wufeng had finally left and could not do anything to heavenly demonic sect. The heavenly demon statue was indeed powerful. The light that shot out of its eyes made his heart palpitate. His instincts were warning him to stay away from it. It seemed like even an enlightened master could not withstand the heavenly demon statue's gaze. It was truly terrifying. He stared fervently at the heavenly demon statue. The 5 of them looked as if they had just been fished out of water. They let go of the statue while panting heavily and glared at Chu Li. Fu Qingya asked, "Zheng, you lured it here, didn't you?" Chu Li replied sheepishly, "I clearly got rid of it. Why did it come back?" "How did you offend an enlightened master?" Fu Qingya's face darkened. If it were not for the formation and the heavenly demon statue, heavenly demonic sect would have been wiped out this time. This was a huge disaster. Chu Li replied, "I disguised myself as Du Feng and went to the Ji dynasty to have fun. Then, I conveniently killed a prince. The emperor has so many sons, so it's not a big deal for one of them to die, right?" "You killed a prince?" Fu Qingya asked. "You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.